come to order. Please stand for tonight's invocation, the pledge to the flag, and remain standing for a special memorial. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance. Stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yesterday, the state of Maryland said goodbye to one of its leaders. Delegate Michael Aaron Bush, Speaker of the Maryland House of Delegates, has left a legacy after years of service in the Maryland General Assembly, and especially during his 16 years as Speaker. He was an advocate for education and an ally of this board and school system. He was a friend to many, including some of us on this dais. On behalf of the Board of Education and the Anne Arundel County Public Schools, we extend our deepest sympathy and condolences to Cindy, Aaron, and Megan, as well as the entire Bush family, and we thank them for sharing Mike with this county and state. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and live streamed on the internet. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room. So please make sure you've read those if you have not already. Item number 2.03 is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the revised minutes?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will approve by affirmation. Item 2.04 is establish agenda order. Would any member like to add anything to the agenda that's not currently published? Seeing none, the agenda will stand as printed. Item 2.05 is recognitions. No recognitions tonight. Item 2.06, school and community highlights. Mrs. Ellis.
Thank you. I had the great pleasure of attending Once on This Island at Meade High School. It's one of my very favorite musicals, and it was my first time attending one of their performances there, and I was blown away by the kids at Meade High School. It was remarkable. I also attended the Perrin J. Mitchell dinner last weekend and had the opportunity to hear some more of our Meade High School performers, including our very own Miss Ann Twine's marvelous son, J4, is that right? That was another remarkable opportunity to hear some of our talented students. And for more of our talented students, I also attended the Little Mermaid performances at Annapolis High School, and they had a very unique way of putting the show together. They double cast all of the sea creatures, or many of them, and did sign language, as well as having another student do the voice of the character. So it was a very, very unique way and very sort of inclusive way to do a show. And several of those kids, we found out today, got Cappy's nominations. So congratulations to all the students in the Baltimore region who received those nominations, but very happy and proud of those Annapolis High School students.
Great, thank you. Mr. Leib.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was very fortunate to be able to attend the April 9th meeting of the Caucus of African American Leaders in their Remembering Dr. Martin Luther King event. But what made it really special for us was that a North County High School junior, Arias Taylor, was recognized for his achievements to date at North County High School. Dr. Lorenzo Hughes, our school system, was there to present him with an award. It was pretty cool to be there with County Executive Pittman and present our student with this recognition. So that was a pretty great evening. Additionally, on, well, I guess it was last week, George, but the superintendent and I had the distinct pleasure of visiting 4 schools, and I'd like to thank the principals, Andre Dillard of Georgetown East, Kimberly Terry of Hillsmere, Celestica Hardy of Mills Parole, and Julia Walsh of Tyler Heights. Let me tell you, our children in Anne Arundel County Public Schools are in good hands. The leaders and the teachers and the staff of these schools, I believe, are doing amazing work. And I was very proud to be there and see this and just see what's going on in our school system. It was a great evening. And lastly, not quite as exciting as visiting schools, but I spent Saturday at the Visioning Anne Arundel General Development Plan Workshop. It was the kickoff. And the county executive was there along with Governor Glendening, who those of you with, may remember was the architect of the Smart Growth America initiative, and the basis for which the county executive is looking at the GDP as it develops again. So it was interesting to hear some of their ideas and be able to bring that back to Mr. Sachnovich and the superintendent to see what may be on the minds of folks as they look about development in the future, which we address on a day-to-day basis. So it was a great 2 weeks and a great time. Thank you, Dr. Arlotto.
Mrs. Shahine.
Gosh, there's so many things that have happened the last couple of weeks that I had the great pleasure of participating in. The first was the celebration of the arts. This was at the Carrie Whedon Early Education Center, and it was fantastic, so cute, and their art was incredible. A bunch of us were, Melissa, Candace, and Michelle were also there with me, and I'm sure they will all tell you how fabulous it was, just as I am. And then I went late to the Caucus of African American Leaders event that night, as I usually do. I also had the great honor of watching for the first time a bocce match. This was during Autism Awareness Week, and Severna Park participated with North County. And I still can't tell you the rules of that sport at all, but I definitely enjoyed myself. It was a beautiful day. It was lovely to see so much amazing teamwork and all of our students having a good time there. Last Saturday was incredible because I went to the All-County Jazz Concert. I love live music. Anyone who knows me knows that. And our students are so talented. It was, it was just incredible. I can't say enough good things. The fact that these guest conductors came in literally a day and a half before the event, you couldn't tell at all. Everything was beautiful, and the music was amazing, and our students are so talented. So massive props to them and all of those amazing students. There were middle and high school students there. It was incredible. And then there was the Folger VIP Day, which I always like to volunteer for. My mom was in town. She got to be my daughter's VIP, and I helped with the, she flew in from LA to do this. And I helped, with the photos, because, it's a photographic good photo moment. So yeah, I helped that. And then I want to just have everyone put on their calendar May 8th for Meade Senior High is going to have their steel drum band concert. I went last year. It was amazing. And they always have a very, a guest person that comes in and helps the students with the various pieces that they're playing. I brought my family last year. I'm going to do the same this year. We already have tickets, and so mark your calendars and please go to that event. It's not something that you would like to miss. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Ms. Antwine.
So my last 2 weeks have been so exciting that I had to write it all down and prepare my own presentation. In my school and community highlights, I was invited to different events throughout the county. First, I want to thank the parents, the teachers, the administrators, the staff members, the business sponsors, the leaders in the community who take the time from their resources to ensure that the positives are invoked for our students. None of what I'm about to read off could happen without that support. So I want to first start with the commemorations for Congressman Perrin J. Mitchell, as well as the assassination for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Those commemorations were so moving. And the fact that our students were there being honored for the work they're doing to continue the work and the sacrifice of these great leaders, that was incredible. I commend the students that were recognized at both programs, and I encourage you to keep going. Then I want to talk about the all-county jazz. I have been blessed to hear jazz growing up in Mississippi in every variation, every style, and I personally, anytime I go in with a little bit of bias. These students were incredible. I would take them anywhere. I cannot explain the musical talent and genius that they displayed. And a lot of us didn't know, but they had only been practicing together for about a week and a half. So I commend their talent, and I encourage you guys to keep going. Then I want to talk about these high school musicals that I was blessed to be part of. I was invited to Old Mill and Meade's high school musicals, and I tell you what, they were fantastic. I commend the actors, the singers, the people on props, the directors. The productions were incredible, and I am looking forward to next year. Finally, no one holds a candle to the preschoolers at Carrie Wheaton. I, for the last week or so, have been singing with them in my head, of course, their rendition that, in addition to everything they presented, their rendition of What a Wonderful World, to see them all dressed up and cute, and then what a wonderful world. It was just beautiful. It was beautiful. What I was blessed to be part of was something so significant that our students from pre-K all the way to our seniors are doing great and positive things. Is just totally commendable. So thank you all for the invitations. Keep them coming so that we can continuously support these students. Thank you.
Ms. Antwine, if we ever sing the national anthem at the start of the meeting, you're it.
Shameless plug for J4.
Mrs. Hummer.
I also attended Once on This Island and Little Mermaid, and they were both amazing. And I have to give a special shout out to the music departments because they both had live orchestras, which adds so much to the performance and just amazing. And the Little Mermaid was so innovative to have the signers there with it that was very unique. And so hats off to both of those schools for outstanding things. If you ever want to celebrate the diversity of our schools and our students, next year, you need to go to the Maryland City Diversity Night, Multicultural Night. It was amazing. They had students from so many countries and all decked out in their cultural finery and dancing and singing. It was, and also hats off, they had all the great restaurants from every ethnic group out there, so the food was amazing. So, but it was so much fun and so great to see the families all out celebrating the great diversity of that community. I also attended Annapolis High School last week. Junior Achievement does a program, and for all of you parents out there, this is fabulous. They had seniors, and they had to go around to stations. They were given a budget. They were given a career and an income, and they had to go station to station and figure out their rent and car payment and clothes and phone and all of that. It was quite eye-opening, and I was happy to see my senior was taking part in it and taking it very seriously and realizing that money will be on him someday. So that's a great thing that we bring into our schools. So that was great to see live. Ms. Corkadell and I both attended. We had 3 schools this year that are getting renewals for excellence in gifted and talented education. And I was able to go to Central Elementary when they were presenting and showcasing all they're doing for our gifted and talented students. And it's just amazing what great opportunities are out there and to see that in action. So thank you, Principal Grubel, for that. And I also, along with Ms. Schalheim, attended the Autism Awareness special bocce match at North County, and seeing our unified teams. It's one of the great things that we do in this county, among many, is our unified sports teams and our unified PE and dance classes, and to see the 2 unified Severna Park and North County working together and having this special day. It was a beautiful day for it, and it was a great event. So thank you to teacher Lisa Magnus, who organized that, and for inviting us all to come out.
Thank you. Mrs. Corkadell.
So a couple of things were already mentioned, but I will just do my own sort of shout out. Obviously, the Carrie Whedon celebration of arts and music. I got to tell you, so this class, because they are a new place, these are the flagship. These are the flagship students that will be promoted class, and so to see them from start, to see our children develop so much, I mean, to recognize and understand the average 3- and 4-year-old not knowing a whole lot, and how much that they were able to do in those skits of the music. To be clear, just so you know, usually when you go to a music event, you get 3 or 4 per group. These guys just kept rocking, and they just kept on singing. And it was like 6 or 7, I believe, the musical presentations. There was, I mean, it just makes your heart so incredibly warm. And to see these proud parents. I know that there was concern in the county, down in South County, in Galesville, about will the Carrie Whedon Center continue to meet the needs of the community, and I gotta tell you that we are doing that and then some. That we've opened up something that will be an asset to the community, so that they can continue to grow. South County's fairly rural, does not always have access to things, so for them to have this opportunity somewhere that's close to home in their community to make it their own, I know that they have well done that, and the renovations in the building. Major kudos to our Chief Operating Officer and all the staff who supported that to make sure that the historical components of the building were maintained, and that the history of that building and how it has grown. I just wanted to, I figured was noteworthy. Prior to, in the morning, before I met with Smith's Hummer at Central Elementary for their E-Gate presentation, I had the pleasure of joining Principal Harris at Davisonville Elementary for theirs, and they did a slightly different format of showcase. I just wanted to, every single one of those kids, to be clear, did such an outstanding job. You know, those programs are how we meet the needs of all of our students. And so to see our children grow, I mean, we were watching first graders have chess matches that would rival any 2 adults, and anyone in this room I would challenge. And I bet you they would have a really good chance of beating you. Just amazing. But I wanted to do a special shout out from Davisonville. There was a young boy, I'm just going to say his first name is Spencer. He's part of the ALPS, of both ALPS programs, and his speech as to why he has grown and the importance of ALPS, to me, was the perfect little gift of demonstration of why these programs are so important, and what it really takes for a school to achieve this and to go above and beyond. And so I look to those 3 schools as encouragement, and hopefully our other schools will be able to continue to grow their programs, and maybe we could one day see all of our elementary schools certified. So thank you very much to Principal Gruber and Principal Harris once again. And thank you, Superintendent Arlotto, for you and your staff's gracious welcoming at all those events.
Thank you. Mrs. Ellis.
I'm very sorry. I was remiss in mentioning the students at the Perrin J. Mitchell dinner presenting a living museum. These students, most of them elementary, some of them middle school. They're from various schools in our district, and these kids each researched a particular person in history that was important to them, and they shared I learned a lot from these students. Some of our youngest elementary students did this work, so I had to come back and give a shout out to them. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Rea.
Thank you. So I had the amazing opportunity a couple weeks ago to give some remarks at the Anne Arundel County Council PTA fundraising event. It was wonderful. They invited me to come and give some remarks and express how much our school system values our parents and our teachers for the work they do in our county. And I just want to say, Miss Teresa Tudor, I have never seen somebody silent auction that hard. It was awesome. Those iFly tickets, whew. And I also had the amazing opportunity to travel with Dr. Arlotto and Miss Monique Jackson to a couple of our schools. I visited 3 elementary schools in my cluster. I got to see how not only they garner creativity, but they integrate the water and the B&A trail into everyday curriculum. It was amazing seeing what these elementary school students do at such a young age. Not only that, but I got to see Move, Move, Move actually in action. I know I've been asking Dr. Arlotto to see that for forever, and it was amazing just to see how they can get up out of their seat for 6 hours of the day and just really not only, again, garner creativity, but just move around and get to know one of their classmates. It was awesome. Not only that, but I got to visit Meade High School. I know Principal Yor has been asking me to come for forever, and it was amazing walking around the school building with him. He greeted every single student we saw, and we actually got to sit down in his office, Dr. Lana and I, and talk to him. And I don't think have ever seen a principal speak so highly of his students. What he said really touched my heart. He said that how he every day tries to make every single student feel like they matter, because he knows that there could be some students that think so poorly of themselves, or some students that have no hope. So what he tries to do is either hug or handshake or just say hi to every single student as they walk in the building, so that they know that they have somebody to go to. And just hearing him speak about that really made me realize that he's an amazing principal. Not only that, but he is what principals should strive to be like, is what I'm trying to say. So it was truly wonderful. Not only that, but I also got to, with Miss Monique Jackson, go around Cat South and just see all the amazing programs that we have to offer students: electricity, nursing, dentistry, just how students at the end of their high school career can come out and go straight into the workforce or straight into college and already have that certificate that so many jobs pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get for those students. So it's really amazing. And not only that, but he told me that they actually offer a couple of days a week all of their lessons in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking students. So that just shows equity and how Anne Arundel County really is trying to target every single student and open up opportunities for every single student. So these past weeks have really been inspiring to me and really opened up my eyes to everything that we're trying to do as a county. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Urea. And one of the board meetings that I look forward to each year is when our student board members commit to their college and university of choice. And since our last meeting, Mr. Ray has been accepted and committed to University of Maryland College Park as a double major. She is, and this is just amazing, double major in public policy and Chinese. So congratulations.
I just want to say, Mr. Cheknovich, following in your footsteps, I know you are a College Park grad as well, so I want to shout that out.
he could tell you where the parties are. Well, no, he can't. Item 2.07 is the superintendent's update, and in the interest of time with our heavy agenda, Dr. Arlotto has waived the update for this evening. Item 2.08 is the policy committee update. Mrs. Corkadell.
I'm going to keep this very brief. The policy committee met on April the 10th, 2019 at 1 p.m. And we reviewed regulations DI-RA, technology use and security. No recommendations necessary to the board. JJD, student contest, was referred to the board on the policy recommendations. That should do it. When we get to May and June, we will be starting to work on making sure that our policies meet the new legislation needs issued by the state. And so that's always a monumental undertaking. And we are still on track with our schedule. I wanted to do an extra special shout out to the staff for their continued diligence in there. When I attended the National Association of Board Members annual conference, I attended several policy type sessions, and one thing that stuck out is that there is no mistake in my mind and no question, I doubt in my mind, that we have a stellar staff and we're on the cutting edge. And the things that were best management practices are things that we've been doing for years. So I just wanted to take that moment to tell you that we don't just stack up well against our other fellow municipalities in the state, but in the nation. And thank you so much for all you do to support us.
Thank you, Mrs. Corkadell. Item 2.09 is the CRASC report. Savannah.
Good evening, President Gilliland, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Savannah Quick. I attend Northeast High School, and I am Secretary of Education for CRASC. On March 21st, CRASC held the final GA for our middle school leadership series at George Fox Middle School. Thank you to Destiny Mosley, a senior at North County High School, for speaking to students about her book, Bully Proof Middle School. A special thank you to Bria Barksdale from the Glen Burnie High School class of 2018 for discussing her kindness campaign as one of our sessions. The day was lots of fun, and there was even some dancing. At the end of March, CRASC members attended the Mass Convention held in Ocean City. We brought 13 students from 5 different schools. 15. Ooh. Everyone had a fantastic time meeting student leaders from all across Maryland and electing new MASC officers. We plan to attend next year with more students. CRASC has been given the awesome opportunity to collaborate with the Elementary Reading Office as they revise curriculum with a special focus on implicit bias. Each committee member participating was given 2 books to read. The reader will take notes on any implicit bias they see and switch books with another reader. In the end, we will all compare notes and help write a general outline of topics that need to be carefully discussed while teaching these books. It is an amazing opportunity, and we are very excited for the student perspective to be included. On April 4th, CRASC hosted the 2nd annual debate for student member of the board finalists. We would like to thank ACPS TV broadcast team for ensuring that everything ran smoothly. Since my last report, the students of Anne Arundel County have elected the 2019-2020 student member of the board. CRASC would like to congratulate Rita Alvey from Annapolis High School on her win. Her name has been forwarded to Governor Hogan for appointment as of July 1st. Thank you to Lindale Middle School for being amazing hosts. The nomination period for CRASC officer positions is now open. Students can find the form on our website, www.aacps.org/CRASC. Nominations are due to Ms. Pellegrin by April 29th, 2019. If more than 3 students are nominated for a position, interviews will be held in May. I appreciate the opportunity to give you a quick update about what's happening in CRASC. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Urea.
Thank you so much, Savannah. So I just want to let the board know that I have had the privilege of not only being Rita's close friend, but working with her in Crask, and I am so excited for you, Rita. She has done a phenomenal job being the Secretary of Legislation within Crask and constantly being kept up to date, as well as building a partnership with Ms. Ortiz. So I'm so excited for you, and I know you'll do a wonderful job next year.
Ms. Antoine.
I just wanted to publicly extend my congratulations as well to you, Rita. We're looking forward to it, and as you already know, you have some tough shoes to fill, but I know you'll do a great job.
Mrs. Schalheim.
Same here. Congratulations, Rita. I can't wait to hear about your priorities and work with you, and congratulations.
Thank you. Item 2.10 is the PTA report.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto. Good evening, board members. My name is Vanessa Rivera, and I am the Anne Arundel County Council PTA president. I just have a few updates for you tonight. On April 4th, PTA hosted its annual Funder Day banquet to honor all the hard work of our amazing volunteers. Thank you to Dr. Arlotto, Mrs. Urea, and Mrs. Ellis for being part of that event and collaborating with us. We are so thankful for your presence that day. And the event is held in conjunction with a silent auction, and all those proceeds go to our scholarship fund. We were very fortunate that day, thanks to Ms. Tudor and others, to raise over $2,000 for our scholarship fund. Yay! Those funds actually go to support 2 graduating Anne Arundel County public school students, so we're very excited that we're able to continue those 2 scholarships. We also hosted our reflection ceremony that celebrates the artistic talents of all pre-K through 12th grade students, and their artwork is actually on display here at the board, so you guys can definitely see it as you walk out the door. And finally, I'd just like to say that we are looking for very exciting and willing volunteers. We have a couple positions on our board open, so if there is an interest, please visit our PTA website, aaccpta.org, or please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Antoine.
Stay right there. Hello.
Hi.
We have been communicating for a couple of years and never met eye to eye. I want the world to know how much work you do on behalf of the entire PTA organization, and she does it a lot of times all by herself. I thank you for your work that you're doing, and I encourage parents, teachers, students all to get involved with her and Ms. Tudor to ensure the best for our students through the PTA. Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much.
We'll now move to our public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes each and may not allocate their time to others. A tone will sound when time has expired. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer sessions with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant. And we've got a number of cards tonight. I'll call them in groups of 5 so that we have chairs available. Connor Curran, Lucas Gorlin Tarbell, Beckett Hummer, Michael Solomon, and I hope it's Shivani.
No, Charlie Patel.
Harvey Patel. Sorry.
Good evening, President Gillen, Vice President Urea, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Connor Curran, and I am a sophomore at Old Mill High School. Having the best GPA among my peers is not my top priority. It shouldn't be theirs either. Class rank to me is just simply a number on my transcript that colleges don't even look at anymore. It systematically tells us who is better just based off our grades. As we go through our high school experience, we are shown what place we are academically among our peers with no other factors included. No matter how hard you work, no matter how many late nights you had, no matter how many times you cried out of frustration, no matter how easy it was for the kid next to you. Not even to mention that we have students whose parents are struggling financially and have to work after school every day. We have students who have to help out their single mother to watch and take care of their siblings. We have students who don't even have a safe home. Those students are put in a position for them not to be able to make it to the top, unlike their peers who don't face those same struggles. There's a way to fix this inequality. If we eliminate class rank, then we create an equal playing field amongst how we measure success for all students, so they can all be set up for success not only in the classroom, but in the real world. When we address this disparity, all students in this county have an opportunity to thrive to their fullest capacities. The mottos this school system runs on a daily are elevating all students, eliminating all gaps, and all means all. If this board truly holds truth to those mottos, then that alone right there should give you what you need to vote on this upcoming resolution. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Arlotto, President Gilliland, Vice President Urea, and fellow board members. When my friends and I have discussions about colleges, I hated it when they brought up class rank. Compared to my friends, I had a lower class rank. Some days, I would come home from school thinking I wasn't as valuable as them because my rank wasn't as high. I understand that in life, competition is expected among others. However, class rank undermines other helpful contributions, such as students in their career study programs. For example, I have friends who go to local elementary and middle schools for internships to help younger students succeed in their classes because they are devoted to make a positive, lasting impact on children's lives. On a ranking system, it puts the career study students at an unfair disadvantage because their class rank is lower since they can't take as many classes during their day. I applaud the Anne Arundel County public school system for adopting the Latin Honors Program because it recognizes the diversity of student successes in the wide array of curriculum options. It is great because not only does it recognize weighted GPA achievements, but more students across the spectrum of programs are recognized, something that valedictorian and salutatorian don't do. It also sets up explicit requirements of what a student has to do to achieve the award, pushing and encouraging them instead of taking a gamble and stressing crazily over whether or not they'll get recognized for academic achievements at graduation. A student is a real human being, not a number, which is why I support Vice President Urea's initiative to abolish class rank. It is a beneficial move for students because more deserving students are able to be recognized for their curriculum achievements during their high school careers. It opens up more opportunities for students to pursue their passions, like high school internships, without being unfairly penalized. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Vice President Gilliland, President Gilliland, Vice President Urea, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Beckett Hummer, and I'm an 8th grader at Broken Park Middle School. Next year, I will be attending Meade High School, class of 2023. As I am already taking high school level classes, this decision would not affect my grade level, but it would start affecting my 6th grade peers. Starting in elementary school, we have been taught to try our hardest to get good grades. In middle school, there starts to be more pressure for good grades as high school is approaching. There has always been the top of the class. No matter what grade you are in, you know who is doing the best. But no one or two are better than everyone else. There are many students who try as hard as they possibly can, and their hardest is not as good as someone else's. Class rank singles out the top two when many students do their best despite their circumstances not to be recognized. It also limits your options. Students are choosing classes that may raise their grade by 1/100th of a point rather than choosing a class that actually interests them. As a PVA student, I know that how much the program has benefited me, and as I've been able to take classes that explore my passions. I've also seen how students who take the programs of choice, these wonderful opportunities in AACPS, have been disadvantaged by these class rankings because of the classes we must take to fulfill our requirements. I would hate for a student to miss out on these opportunities just to have a title when they can receive recognition from the current Latin honor system, which uses the same standard for every program and pathway. One wrong test answer should not make you feel inferior to anyone else, so let's stop putting a title on it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Solomon. I'm a current junior at Springbrook High School in Montgomery County and the co-president of Montgomery County Students for Change. We're a student-led organization that's dedicated to promoting civic engagement among the youth of Montgomery County. I'm testifying before you because at this very moment, Anne Arundel County has the opportunity to do the right thing, to make the decision that my county made back in 1993. Over 25 years ago, our school board recognized that it was time to move on and eliminate an archaic system that did more harm to students than good. According to the National Association for College Admissions Counseling, over the past few decades, the majority of public and private school systems in Maryland and across the nation have eliminated class rank. Countless studies have shown that class rank belittles our students and separates them by relatively insignificant margins. It discourages student growth and diminishes student self-worth, with the exception of the top-ranked student. Many who are opposed to this resolution have argued that ranking students by cumulative GPA is important because class rank is required by selective universities. While this may have been true in the distant past, this is no longer the case. A 2015 study showed that less than 15% of U.S. colleges and universities consider class rank to be considerably important. And after this study was published, the rate has continued to decline. When we put students in an environment that discourages growth and emphasizes competition, we worsen the already alarming degree of stress that high school causes. According to an article published by New York University, 49% of students felt, quote, a great deal of stress nearly every day, and 31% felt, quote, somewhat stressed. The long-term effects of stress are even more harmful than the short-term experience. The American Psychological Association states that chronic stress impacts the musculoskeletal, respiratory, cardiovascular, nervous and reproduction systems. This is a detriment that is beginning in high school students as they feel the need to compete for academic status. If we ask ourselves, what is the fundamental purpose of a class rank system, then the answer is clear. Rank ordering students by cumulative GPA has little to do with developing young minds and encouraging performance. Rather, it is unquestionably about selecting and isolating talent. Furthermore, we must ask ourselves whether or not selecting talent is the job of a public education system. And based on what I know and have read about Anne Arundel County Public Schools, this school system has included equity and opportunity for all students in its priorities. Even a quick visit to the AACPS website will bear the message, quote, elevating all students and eliminating all gaps. If there is a consensus that AACPS strives to elevate all students and eliminate all gaps and to develop talent and further learning, then there must also be a consensus that maintaining a class rank system is undoubtedly contrary to this goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Ellis.
Excuse me. I want to thank. Oh, sorry, I didn't get his name. I want to thank you, first of all, wholeheartedly for coming here and sharing your experience and knowledge with our district. That's very helpful.
Thank you so much.
Does Montgomery County not recognize valedictorian and salutatorian in any way, or is it just a different way?
After class rank was removed by a board decision in '93, gradually all of our high schools ended up ditching the cum laude system as well because it relied upon ranking students, and that was essentially contrary to the decision that was made in 1993.
Okay, so is there any type of student recognition that goes on?
We recognize students in different ways, and there's no actual standard process or requirement as to how the high schools will do that in our county.
It's by school.
Yeah, there's things like leadership and like academic performance, but not by rank.
Thanks again
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Grannon. Yeah.
So I've got a follow-up. I just want to make sure I understood your testimony. So that means in Montgomery County, there's no Latin honors of any kind?
No, or no required Latin honors. So gradually it was ditched. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charmi Patel, and I'm a junior that attends South River High School. Throughout middle school, I had one goal, to be valedictorian. I can proudly say that I achieved that goal, but it was not everything I had imagined. Although it was a great honor and my dream to be valedictorian, I am testifying to remove the class rank system from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Class rank is a way of defining a student as a number, pitting them against their classmates to succeed. This creates negative mentality towards their peers. Anne Arundel County is trying so hard to implement kindness into our daily lives, but how can we do that when we're being compared to other students? The class rank system involves using students' weighted GPA and comparing it to those of the entire class. In this class, there are members of CAT South or North, STEM, IB, BEMA, or other magnet programs who all have a disadvantage due to their class scheduling and program-based classes they must take. Students with professional internships or jobs cannot take the same classes as students with a full schedule, and from that, they are decreased on the ranking system, making them regret their decision because they're no longer as smart as they were. In a time where college admissions are catering around the well-roundedness of a student, students should not be focused on taking the most AP or honors classes just to give their GPA a boost. but should take classes about things they're passionate about. Students are giving up their music classes so they can fit in one more AP into their already busy schedule. All students are unique and have different aspirations. They should want to take classes that reflect what they are passionate about without worrying about their rank. I understand that students work hard and they should be honored. I think a great way of doing that is through the Latin honor system. Everyone in high school is working towards graduation. Through Latin honors, more than 2 students are honored for their achievements. The Latin system honors everyone that worked towards being summa cum laude, magna cum laude, or cum laude, and doesn't pit students against each other. In this system, all students know the requirements to be summa, magna, or cum, and can work together to achieve this level they want. High school is hard. It's a time where students are working so hard to find things they're passionate about and would like to do in the future. We should not be defined by a number. We should not cry because of a bad grade, and we should not feel self-conscious about our intelligence, as we're all strong in different things. Thank you.
Thank you. The next 5 names, Princess Merritt, Jesse Harris Jr., Zach Brown, Kayla, I think it's Tengea, hope I pronounced that right, and Coleman Campbell.
Good evening, President Gillian, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. I'm dressed like this to show not only am I a student, but I'm a student testifying in front of you all today. Okay. My name is Princess Merritt, and I am 140 out of 590 at Meade High School. My best friends' names are number 1 and number 27. That is all we are, numbers trapped in a numerical point of reference that only rates us best to worst, but also most to least capable. And everybody knows our number because in high school, that is all we are. I've seen my best friend, number 1, stress, not sleep for more than 36 hours, break out into tears over a B, and the list goes on. All because she wants to stay number 1. And everyone would know the minute she slipped to number 2. But I also know how it feels to be number 140, to know that to my school, I am less capable than 139 other students, less likely to succeed, less likely to get into college, and less important. I truly feel the embarrassment when I'm asked what is my number, because again, there are 139 students who are better than I am. I feel the tears well into my eyes, the pit in my stomach, and the embarrassment roll off of me. My GPA is fine. However, it is the number that says that I am less than. I am speaking here today because I know that it is very likely that I will never be in the top 30, the top 1%, or even the top of my class. However, with the Latin honor system, I would be able to get recognized for my achievements. The nights that I stayed up, cried, and even had severe panic attacks over a grade. And my number and name would no longer be 140, but I would finally be able to be me, Princess Merritt. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, President Gillard, Vice President Araya, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Jesse Harris Jr., and I am President of the St. Mary's Association of Student Councils. And I'm here to testify today on the Anne Arundel County class rank. Not good enough, unsatisfactory, poor performance, and unmotivated. These words depict how students begin to feel about themselves when they have low grades. Students are continuously confronted with social educational ideals. However, it is especially disheartening when these ideals are perpetuated by the education system. County boards should encourage student development and success. However, having access to the class rank does nothing but diminish self-esteem and hinder student growth. Students need to know that their GPA does not define them or their future. Additionally, class rank does not define a student's success. Again, class rank does not define a student's success. Personally, I have never had access to my class rank. My academic competition is myself, doing better than I've done before. Every student takes their own academic route. Therefore, student success cannot be generalized and evaluated based on differing academic paths. School shouldn't be an environment of discouragement, but encouragement of student academic excellence, and the constant image of an academic standard does not foster that environment. This is why I support Vice President Araya's proposed policy change, because I've seen firsthand how not having a class rank motivates students on an individual level rather than a competitive one. I strongly believe that this is what will foster a more mentally healthy idea of education. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak, and have a great day.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto, Vice President Araya, and Ms. Corcado, and the fellow members of the board. My name is Zach Brown, and I am a senior at South River High School. I am here to support the Vice President Araya's movement to eliminate class rank because I have seen both sides of the spectrum. Unlike most of my peers here, I am not at the top of my class, and I'm nowhere near it, and I haven't been for a long time. I have a twin sister who is my best friend and has helped me through everything I've ever gone through. My sister has fought all of high school to get up at the top of the class rank. She's a multi-sport athlete, a state championship lacrosse player, and one of the nicest, most caring volunteers in the Best Buddies program I've ever met. I have seen her miss multiple social activities. I've seen her cry. I've seen her get physically sick, and I've seen her have panic attacks so bad she has to lay down in bed with my mother just to relax, all due to the fact that multiple of her friends' numbers were higher than her. As for me, I have shared many of my friends with my sister, and a lot of the time it's a great thing. Whenever we begin to discuss class rank, I have to leave the room. Whenever we bring it up and they ask me what mine is, I usually lie. Or I avoid the question and I make a joke and then I leave. My number has embarrassed me, and it's just made me feel like less than everyone else there. The sad part about this is even if my class rank was higher than what it is now, I would be where my twin sister is today, crying and trying to get higher. We shouldn't be supporting a system that only supports the top. We should be supporting a system that supports the majority. This is my reasoning and this is my testimony. I thank you for your time.
Video here. Do I have any? Hi, my name is Kayla Tingea, and I am a junior at Northwood High School, located in Montgomery County. I'm here speaking to you from the perspective of a student in a district that does not have a class rank system. When I discuss my grades with my friends, I know it isn't necessarily a competition of who is supposedly doing the best. It's a welcoming environment where we can confide in each other, offer support, and relate to one another. This allows for healthy motivation, something that class rank simply cannot provide. Another person's success should not be seen as your own demise. If we had a class rank in Montgomery County, I know students would be more hesitant to talk about how they are doing in school with the only other people who can actually understand what they're going through academically. This is a possible ramification that your students are facing right now, and it is detrimental to their mental health. Kids are stressed out about their GPA, tests, exams, classwork, sports, and everything else that is going on in their personal life. I see it every day, but my friends get me through it. We get through it together. And I don't have to be paranoid and wonder if they're really hoping for me to fail so that they can take my spot, and vice versa. I genuinely feel for those in Anne Arundel County who have to worry about their rank in addition to all else. The reality is, well over the majority of students won't be in the 90th percentile, and how can that possibly be good for their confidence and self-worth? MCBS students care about their grades, want a good future for themselves, and are motivated. We are proof that class rank isn't needed in order to produce desired results. These kids are people before they are students, and definitely before they are a dehumanizing number, and we need to treat them as such and get rid of the class rank system. Thank you.
Good evening, President Gilliland, Vice President Araya, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Coleman Campbell, and I'm a senior at Southern High School. Tonight I will be providing my own testimony in favor of getting rid of class rank, as well as testimony from my friend Nia. Nia is an IB junior at Old Mill High School. She writes, "My time at Old Mill has been a rocky one as a student who has had to use many of the county's resources, such as home and hospital services and the double robot, to attend classes after a series of neurological issues my freshman year. I now write this testimony able, however my situation at school, along with many others, was not always pleasant when it came to keeping my academic integrity while dealing with sickness or issues in my home life. One of the many stresses I encountered upon my return to school spring of my freshman year until this past marking period of my junior year has been keeping competition for class rank. As a student with many sickness-related absences and learning difficulties, it has been nearly impossible to stay optimistic about my class rank position. Upon talking to my classmates and students at General Assemblies, there are hundreds of students who share my opinion when I say that the class rank system has become unnecessary, redundant, and distressing. There are two main opinions among the student body that I have found. One, students have stopped paying attention to class rank altogether, and it is an unnecessary number that doesn't matter or define them. Or two, it is a major assist in the ever-growing stresses of college-bound students to stay competitive. Both of these opinions are damaging to the student body and their personal and environmental morale. I support Ms. Josie Orea and her class rank initiative, as well as her enthusiasm for the cum laude system, as it recognizes academic achievement for all students. As we are approaching a new age in the educational system, more traditional qualifiers like straight A's and standardized test scores are becoming outdated. Both high schools and colleges are beginning to look at students as a whole to make them well-rounded both academically and as a person. We now often hear that numbers do not define us, whether that be an SAT score, GPA, weight, income, etc. And it is now my hope that the class rank number will be added to that list. The elimination of class rank will invite academics to view me as a person and not a number. My classmates and I will not be ashamed or afraid to share where we are on the totem pole, but in fact we will be enthusiastic to share our strengths. Now for my little piece, if I have time. I am ranked 6th in my class. However, the difference between my GPA and that of our valedictorian is a mere 300th of a point. That diminutive difference is due to two things. First, rather than taking another honors class sophomore year, I took standard piano to embrace my passion for playing piano. Second, I dropped an AP class this year to pursue an internship as a music class assistant at my former elementary school. Both of these decisions involved much grief and contemplation, as I knew that I would feel inferior when my GPA fell short. If I had chosen to pass up these opportunities, as many of my classmates have, I believe I would feel much less fulfilled now, not to mention my college applications would not be as diverse. Aside from the mental health concerns that Nia mentioned, the antiquated class rank system encourages our students to abstain from beneficial opportunities in order to take more classes in which they may not be interested. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just call the 6 more cards. Ada Garcia, Diego Toledo, Reese Barrett, Elizabeth Zarilli, Joshua Omalola, sorry, and Janet Norman.
These next 2 are so powerful.
Josh, you were called up. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Omalola, and I serve as the Maryland Associations of Student Council's president for the state of Maryland. I had the fortunate opportunity of working with some of the students behind me, as well as Vice President Urea. In all my years of student government, student advocacy, and education policy, I've yet to find a more outdated and more inaccurate system than the class ranking system. In summary, and as many of my peers have stated, the class ranking system solely bases you just on your GPA. Just on your GPA. We're not taking the factors of your sports, your athletics, none of that. Just your GPA. And that's where the injustice lies. Because as a county, as humans, as a civilization, it's unfair to mark people just on the numbers. Imagine being at the bottom of the rank. Because you were at the bottom of the rank, you're penalized. You're looked down upon because you have this number that isn't 1. Because you wanted to pursue your passions. As one of my former peers just stated, he wanted to pursue piano. And he knew this was going to impact his cumulative GPA. He knew he wouldn't be 1. He knew he wouldn't be valedictorian, but he took that risk. And unfortunately, he had to take that risk because this county has given us a policy that puts students against each other. Imagine talking to your best friend and arguing with them over a number. Oh, I'm 6. Oh, I'm 4. This system doesn't encourage healthy relationships. It doesn't encourage a great high school career. And more importantly, it doesn't encourage a good mental health. An issue that students here in Anne Arundel County, students in Maryland, and all over the nation are facing is mental health, and this system is a problematic portion of it. Excuse me. A resolution to this inaccurate system is the Latin honor system. Now, this system does take your GPA, but instead of putting you in numbers, you reach a criteria. So, for example, if I have a 4.3 and there's a 4.2 student, we're listed in the same criteria. We're not given a number. We're not labeled. We're honored for our great GPA, but we're not labeled. Just to give you some statistics, it is becoming less and less common in high schools to do rankings. Swarthmore College released an interesting statistic about its 2019 entering class that stated only 44% of their incoming class were ranked at their high schools. Only 44%. And now, I'm not a person for numbers, but if a private university can give me numbers, I'll take them. A lifelong educator once said, students are more than a number. It's hard time that this board adheres to that policy. The students of Maryland support Vice President Urea's initiative to remove class ranking and solely use the cum laude system. The students have spoken. I urge the board to do what counties across the nation have done and show students that their educational success is not derived from an archaic numerical comparison. We are more than numbers. Please treat us like that.
Hello, my name is Ara Garcia and I go to Annapolis High School. I came today to testify against class rank 2, and I am an English learner, as you can tell from my accent, and I came to the United States 4 years ago. After 3 years of being an ESOL student, I tested out and got into the IB program, and during the ESOL program, my classes were labeled as standard classes, and despite having good grades, my grade point average, GPA, wasn't as good as if I was taking more advanced classes. In order to do good at my classes, I needed to learn the language. So it was difficult to get an straight A's in my content classes because besides having to learn the academic content, I had to learn a new language. The more I learned the language, the more my GPA went up. And my effort has been consistent, but knowing the language has given me the advantage of getting more credits for it. It seems unfair that when I present my transcript to colleges, it doesn't reflect the effort that I put since my freshman year, but rather the fact of my language development. Class rank is heavily influenced on these grades that are not representing who I am and what I have done throughout these 4 years of high school. I think that they are culturally biased, negatively impacting ESOL students in particular.
Good evening, board members. My name is Diego Toledo, a current junior at Annapolis High School and a part of the ESOL program. As we know, class rank is one of the features that colleges look at when a student applies for admission. But it is essential to understand that a school rank should be much more than just comparing GPAs. When an English speaker of another language applies, we're usually in disadvantage for that fact that we don't get high ranks. As any human being, we also have goals, and not all of us want to go to a community college. But when we apply to top schools, we are in disadvantage because of many factors. One of them being class rank that doesn't define us as a person. It is not that we don't challenge ourselves, but ESOL students get a schedule that most of the time is hard to change. Therefore, we continue with the same standard level classes. I understand that AP and IB students work hard and their classes are difficult, but we as speakers of another language work equally, since besides learning content from our classes, we have to learn a new language, and even so, we are not ranked as high as them. We all want to achieve our goals, but I think it is unfair that students who spend hours studying, working, and putting their maximum effort into their classes will be in disadvantage just because a number is measuring their capacities and trying to define who they are. Thanks for your time.
Hi everyone, my name is Reese Barrett and I'm super excited to speak to you all on this topic as it has affected me personally a great deal. I'm currently the top ranked student of Severna Park High School's class of 2019 and pending my fourth quarter grades will graduate as valedictorian. While I'm incredibly proud of this accomplishment, I do not believe that working towards this goal has been truly beneficial to me. In fact, I am actually in full support of Josie's motion to abolish class rank, beginning with current 6th graders. Especially at a school as competitive as Severna Park, becoming valedictorian meant going to extremes. I will graduate with a total of 15 AP or equivalent credits. 6 of these were taken in my junior year, and I'm taking 6 currently. For this academic year, I have a 5.0 weighted GPA. All of this is in addition to everything else that I consider important in my life. Balancing such a strenuous course load with dance classes 6 days a week, classes at the community college, community service work, college applications, clubs at Severna Park, and just being a sister, daughter, and friend is almost impossible. To be completely honest, the only way I've been able to do it is through extreme time management and sleeping much less than is recommended by doctors. I set my sights on becoming valedictorian early. In fact, it influenced my course selection heavily starting from freshman year. I chose classes based on their effect on my weighted GPA. This meant that I did not take classes that interested me because I knew they would bring down my rank. I missed out on robotics and speech and debate and piano and aerospace engineering and architecture and creative writing and social issues, all standard or honors classes that I would have liked to try. I also chose not to continue my summer internship at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory through the school year in favor of taking more AP level classes. In other words, the class rank system pressured me to prioritize AP classes over what was truly best for me. I wanted the recognition that came with the title of valedictorian, but I lost the opportunity to use my high school years to explore my academic interests. I limited myself to taking the AP classes my school offered, and I know I am not the only one who has done this. In fact, some of my friends who are currently juniors have spoken to me about how they or their friends are taking full AP course loads next year. It is unclear who Severna Park's next valedictorian will be, so many of the top students are taking 8 AP classes at once to vie for the spot, hoping it will get them into the college of their dreams or make their community proud. They and I would have had drastically different high school experiences if this system was not in place. We all would have had significantly more sleep, significantly less stress, and significantly more room to learn and grow. With the cum laude system, students are not working against each other. Instead, the highest level of recognition is an incredible accomplishment that is achievable without being unhealthy. Education, not competition, is what this school system should prioritize, and eliminating class rank would give more students the opportunity to use their high school years to explore their interests and live balanced lives. Thank you.
Good evening, honorable board members and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Elizabeth Zarilli, and I am a junior at Broadneck High School. I am here to address class rank. A leading motivator in this decision is the county's overall mental health. Before I begin, I want to make it clear that my stance on class rank in no way correlates to apathy regarding mental health and those who struggle with mental health. My family has long struggled with severe mental health issues, and my aunt devastatingly took her own life a few years ago. I have seen and felt the effects of mental illness firsthand. However, I still support a system of class rank. Today, report cards were sent home. I could say what grades I got and my own standing in my class, but I would rather speak of my second grade teacher, who brought home ecstatically today a straight A report card. These are the students this policy, this change would impact, and these are the students I am here to represent. There are a few key arguments I would like to address. The first is that class rank lends us to being defined as a number. I can personally say that I have never felt defined by my class rank. I am not first, but I have a high class rank. Yet, to colleges, that is really what we are, numbers and data points. In an ideal world, college admissions officers would be able to get to know every applicant personally, but this is not reality. Colleges receive and collect data on every applicant, SAT and AP scores, transcripts of classes, club participation, etc. Any person with even basic statistical knowledge knows that the more data one can gather, the more accurate a conclusion one can draw. Class rank is another data point that students should have the choice to include in their college admissions. And even currently, it is a choice. This decision would remove that choice. Our county is great at honoring achievements in athletics and arts. At Broadneck, we have plaques, trophies, and exhibits honoring these achievements. Yet already we fall woefully short in recognizing academic achievements, and this decision would only further move us in this direction. Class rank is a reward not just for the valedictorian and salutatorian titles, but for any student who works hard and has a class rank that reflects that hard work. Class rank is also a motivator. It would be inaccurate to say that the class rank system does not encourage students to take more challenging classes in pursuit of academic excellence. Competition is positive. It is also an integral part of life. Anything, including class rank when taken to an extreme, is detrimental, and there are students who do suffer from stress induced by academic pressures, but this is true for anything in life. We do not take away the wrestling state championship title because there are students who starve themselves to drop a weight class, or the all-county artist title because some students neglect homework and the social commitments to make time for completing their projects. If mental health is a concern in this county, it must be dealt with on a school-by-school level where the various environments and situations of each specific school can be taken into account. I have seen no statistical evidence linking class rank to increased anxiety, depression, or stress. There are many other more crucial factors that should be addressed and that can make a difference in improving the mental health of our county. A countywide abolishment of class rank is not the solution. Class rank is an unbiased, objective measurement that is beneficial to the students in this county. To address the concerns that in pursuit of a higher class rank, students choose not to take electives that they may want to take, I acknowledge this with 2 words: opportunity costs. Of course, the highest ranked academics do have to give up some choice electives, as I did this year when I chose to take 7 APs. But this is a choice that students should have to utilize their GPA and their class rank to gauge where they are and to tailor their schedules to reflect their own abilities and goals. This self-awareness is a skill that should be developed in high school and is aided by the class rank system. I am not an athlete nor an artist, but I love school and I take pride in my schoolwork. It is not unreasonable that I also take pride in my class rank. I would like to end with this. One does not simply remove a measuring device because he or she does not like the results it garners. One should instead use that data to improve and to learn. Class rank is this vital tool that students should have the right to use as both a motivator and a reward in their pursuit of academic excellence. Thank you.
Good evening, President Gilliland, Ms. Rea, and the board. Thank you for your time. I'd just like to note I will not be able to achieve the eloquence of these high school students here, and I thank them for coming. I would urge you to have more or entirely all evening meetings so that you can get the benefit of having your high school students, your teachers, your parent community come and talk to you and share their wisdom with you. As you know, in my 10 years of participating and watching the board, I've come to a heck of a lot of daytime meetings where it has been approximately 3 to 6 people who are not paid to be in the room, members of the public. So I love the fact that so many students came out, and you have a structural barrier you can remove to provide more participation and more input to you, which is changing to nighttime meetings. In this, I'd love to just talk about the good things, but sometimes we have to focus on the hard stuff. In the spirit of Mike Bush, we can do better for our kids, and we need to. You still have large barriers to communities participating. You have not changed the rule that you have to be in the room in order to comment during public testimony. So if one of these students heard something that was said tonight, and they felt compelled to get up and talk to you, by your rule, they could not do so because they did not register the moment the meeting started. I ask you to please change that rule because you have not changed it. It's the military month of the family, and you still have not fixed the harmful 9:40 a.m. start to Mead Heights Elementary School. They came and talked to you 2 years ago, pretty much to the date, 2 years ago. The principal, the parents, the students begging you to change their 9:40 a.m. high school start or elementary school start time. That's so damaging, and there has been no action on that. Please tell me what your fix is. I'm going to be emailing all of you, and I hope to get a response that I can share with the rest of the community, or that you could share in the newspaper, how you're going to help those military family students and the rest of the students in our county dealing with inappropriate school times. Chronic stress is worsened that you're trying to address with the school ranking system, which I totally approve. Again, in my 10 years, I've rarely heard high school issues discussed. We need to discuss the pressures, the stresses, the fixes that we can do. There's a lot of things you can fix that you have control over. By AACPS policy, you're using middle school grades in a high school GPA. So algebra that you took in 7th grade can count against you in your high school GPA. It's counted as a standard level class. Montgomery County does not do this, nor do your own high school counselors from other schools than mine. They're not able to talk to you about it, and they asked me to. So I hope that you focus on the fixes that you can do to reduce stress in our kids, and later start times and more sleep for our high school students is a big one by our the nation's doctors will tell you. So I'm eager to hear what you're going to do. Thank you.
I'm hopeful that we can get the public comment policy on an upcoming agenda. I know we talked about this briefly in the past, and I would love to revisit that. Okay, well, I hope that we can tackle that again soon. And I'm right there with her on late starting elementary schools, just again for the record, fully in support of making those more developmentally appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, item 4.01 is the superintendent's recommendation on redistricting in the Crofton area. We'll have a special motion momentarily. I'm sorry. My mic's on. Dr. Arlotto, can we have your recommendation, please?
Yes, sir. I recommend board approval of the Crofton Area Option 1 redistricting to take effect in the 2020-2021 school year.
Is there a motion for the board to adopt a redistricting plan to establish boundaries for the new Crofton Area High School and any related boundaries at other affected schools by discussing all four of the options that have been presented and then voting on them by roll call?
So moved.
And second. Good. Thank you.
Jinx.
All right. Mrs. Ellis.
Thank you. I have a few statements to make. I've been deeply involved in this issue since I first became a candidate to sit here. I live in District 4, represent District 4, which means I live in an area that is impacted by this redistricting. So I have been living and breathing this stuff, so bear with me because I've learned a lot, and I really have to make a few statements. When I look at all the options, option 1 creates a greater crowding issue at Arundel Middle School. The projections for 2022 are, I believe, put it at 122% capacity, with Crofton Middle at 115. Options 2 and 3, this is not me making a recommendation, this is just me laying it out a bit. Options 2 and 3 spread out the burden at 117, 119%. So taking that into consideration and knowing that most of the construction in the Crofton area is near completion, there's not a whole lot more growth to happen within Crofton. However, there's a tremendous amount of development that's still going to occur on the west side of Route 3, impacting the Arundel feeder system, including the towns, the communities of Two Rivers and Odenton Town Center. So if we were to put a bulk of the burden on the Arundel feeder system with capacity issues, this burden is going to continue to expand. So that's one point I want to make based on studying the numbers. It's often been said that Route 3 should be a natural boundary, and I have to say I agreed with that when I first started considering the issue, but I'm someone who uses Route 3 on a daily basis, and the more I looked at it and the more thought I put into it, there are residents in the area that we've designated as 1038C that live in the Wild Chapel community, and we have a choice. They can get on a bus, sit at a light, and cross Route 3 and go to a school that's close to them, or they can come to a light, enter Route 3, and travel on Route 3, a route that is becoming increasingly more dangerous. There's been more accidents every year on that route. So no longer do I see Route 3 as a natural boundary in making this determination, because I actually believe it's safer for our students to go across instead of up and down Route 3. And we have been, we've received a great deal of testimony regarding a concern about diversity in both Crofton High School and Arundel High School and the middle schools, and how the various plans impact the diversity of those schools. And we have a fair bit of diversity in the Arundel feeder system. There is some in the Crofton system. But the concern is this community, 1038C, the question is, should we bring students into the Crofton feeder simply to increase diversity in the schools? I don't think we should be making decisions on that basis. However, should we be cutting off a community that does create greater diversity and busing their students up to 4 times a greater distance or commute time in order to, or by picking option 1? That for me is a huge concern. Now we are looking at creating at least the appearance of cutting off a community that has that does bring diversity to the Crofton feeder. In addition, these families are among some of the, I would say, it's a lower income community than many of the surrounding neighborhoods, and the child care services that they use are in Crofton, because it's all those businesses are right up and down Route 3 there, and those many of those child care services, they send a van to the elementary schools to pick up students and take them, and these families at the Wild Chapel community rely on that, and we're creating a great hardship on them, in my opinion, if we are to send their kids to Piney Orchard. They will not be able to be picked up by their daycare services, so they're going to have to find services far away from their home. So for all these reasons, I personally, and I came to this decision this morning, am looking to vote for option 3. But I want to say why it took me until this morning. I had asked quite a while ago, 4 weeks ago tomorrow, to visit 4 of the schools most greatly impacted by the redistricting. And my request was specifically to see transition times occurring in our middle schools and to observe lunch periods, because I wanted to observe some of the capacity issues at our schools. So unfortunately that wasn't able to happen until Monday and Tuesday of this week. So on Monday I visited Piney Orchard Elementary School and Crofton Meadows Elementary School. And the principals of both of those schools were wonderful. They showed me around, and when I asked each of them basically the same questions and what their biggest concerns were with redistricting, and should the board choose the option that puts a greater number of students in their schools. And they both almost verbatim had the same concerns. Has to do mostly with in the elementary schools with the pickup and drop-off procedures and the placing portables on their school grounds, because it will put them over capacity. I'll come back to that in a second. I went to the next day I went to Crofton Middle School and Arundel Middle School, and interestingly, again, the principals were wonderful. They showed me around the schools, and when I asked them questions, they had, again, almost word for word, the same concerns. Their concerns were the transition periods between classes and the lunchroom capacity issues, and what was the other one? Oh, their specials as far as gym capacity and other classrooms, particularly going now to the AB schedule where they have been ABC for middle school. So basically identical concerns. So I had to go on my observations. And as far as the middle schools, Arundel Middle School is a quarter mile long, and during the class transition period, it's one hallway. All the students are in one hallway. And as we observe them changing classes, Dr. Arlotto and I and the principal were standing in sort of a lobby area and peeking down the hall because we couldn't fit in the hall. And I got bumped into several times because as students would pass that lobby area, they would sort of flow out. I mean, it's really massively crowded in those hallways. I observed the transition period at Crofton Middle School. And to be fair, I was told that the, I believe, 6th grade class at that time was not transitioning because of, had to do with their lunch schedules. So I had to take my observation that happened there and add approximately 50% more students and consider what that situation is. Is it ideal at Crofton Middle School? No, but Crofton Middle School is a little bit more of kind of a labyrinth. Students have different hallways to take to get to their classes. It just didn't present to me the same concern that it did at Arundel Middle School. When I observed the lunch periods at both middle schools, Crofton Middle School has an extra room that they have put lunch tables in. So the whole lunch experience, by my observation, was a bit roomier than the Arundel Middle School was. Arundel Middle School, the lunch that I observed, kids were crammed onto the benches. There was plenty of extra seating at the Crofton Middle lunch that I observed. In addition, Arundel Middle School seems to have a little more challenge with their process in eating lunch. We were there about 5 minutes before any student got up to go to the lunch line, because they have procedures there for having students very orderly. And so they had to sit, they had to be quiet, they had to raise their hand to indicate that they were, that they had their attention. It was a much lengthier process. So for that reason, the kids at Arundel Middle School, some of them had very, very little time to eat. Going back to my observations at the elementary schools, both wonderful visits, and I can't speak to one over the other as far as current capacity issues, but it troubles me greatly to think of choosing option one and putting pretty much almost all of the students that are in question here into one elementary school. I can't see doing that to our families who are going to have students there. We're talking about a large overcapacity issue at Piney Orchard. And finally, one of the concerns brought up by the principal at Crofton Meadows Elementary School was that they have sort of a one way in, one way out situation. So they have a bus loop, but it enters the property on the same drive as the cars. And they have currently one bus at Crofton Meadows Elementary School, but they have 10 daycare vans that pick students up at Crofton Meadows. So they use this bus loop, and what the principal was saying was if we added a bus or two, which is what we're talking about, if we bring over 1038C into Crofton, his concern was that there's not room on that loop for those two buses, up to two buses. I'm not sure we're clear on how many. Do we still not know if it's one or two, Dr. Arlotto? I'm sorry. Initially be. Oh, okay. One or two was what was told to me at. So let me tell you about my observations with their dismissal process, because I went back Tuesday afternoon after hearing that concern. I arrived about 30 minutes before dismissal. And Molly, do you have those images? You remember I sent? Yeah. So this first image that is the van at the front of the line on the bus loop. And there is room for it to go to the end of the loop, and it did not. And then the next slide shows you the back of the line of vans and bus. So at this time, there were 9 vans and 1 bus waiting for students to dismiss, and there is room for a couple more buses. Is it ideal? I can tell you the car pickup and drop off situation there is not great. I remember that being the case when my kids went to Millersville Elementary. I very rarely pick my kids up, maybe for an appointment right after school. My point is, yes, the school could use improvements with that situation, but adding a bus or two doesn't necessitate the additional expense. It's something that this school could use anyway, but it's not dependent on whether or not we add buses. So we could address that. You know, I believe Crofton Meadows could use this improvement, but it's not an improvement that's needed specifically because we add a couple of buses. And then the other thing, the other 2 slides. So this is when I toured the school. This is a playground blacktop area that, as you can see, is somewhat enclosed by the school because there's an L-shaped part of the building there. And this is the area that the Principal Trumbull, I believe, told me during my tour that he saw we would, it's his opinion that this is the best location for the portable classrooms should they be needed. And there is a playground, there is playground equipment there. This area currently gets used by 1 class once a day because the other playground, they have much more expansive grounds on the other side of the school, and including rec fields that are used by Parks and Rec. And if you go to the next slide, this is the rec field, and it's hard to see because it's very dark. But right next to the kindergarten wing, next to the building, is a nice playground area for the students. Is there any ideal plan that creates no burden on any students? I don't see one. I don't believe anyone sees that. But I implore you, again, I've been living and breathing this stuff. This is my area, this is where I live, and I know the area, and I feel very strongly that what's best for our students is not option 1. I believe it's option 3. Now we can bring into play option 4, which is not something that I believe would stand alone. It would be adopted with another option. if we adopted option three, then very few students would come into play in option four, because now we're just talking about 1038. Isn't C the Watch Chapel one? Yeah. 1038B. And we don't have the wording right now of the various plans in front of us, but I believe option 4 doesn't address transportation. So while I am recommending option 3, I would also recommend an amendment to option 4, that since we are giving families a choice that most families don't have in our in Anne Arundel County, that option 4 would not come with transportation. That those families are making that choice to take their kids to the school that they are choosing to prefer. And I thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Corcadell. And just in the board's interest, we're going to have the text on screen momentarily.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that should happen.
Thank you, President Gilliland. As the district representative for the New Crofton High School, I feel compelled to take a moment and speak before we vote. And, yeah. Well, Crofton High School will be physically there. So in that regard, I was getting ready to say that if I could just continue. I didn't interrupt you. Yeah. Okay, let me just start all over again. So many years ago, I started working with civic organizations and the residents of Crofton. And I've even gone door to door to many of those residents over the years. Well over 5,000, I would argue probably close to 10,000 residents in District 7. And many and most of them Crofton. And what has been on the minds of Crofton is the need for the increase of capacity of our high schools to add a new high school. And that Crofton was designed, just like a Two Rivers was designed and Four Seasons was designed, with an intent to encourage community schooling. The land was purchased, the middle school was built, and the high school was basically put on hiatus. And the hard work and efforts of Crofton and other residents who recognized. I personally live in Edgewater, and I can tell you that we embraced and strongly supported Crofton with the high school, because we also know that there's more that needs to come in our county. And this is just one very first step. This does not mean that nobody else is going to get another high school. We have them currently in the capital budget. Nor does it mean that to define the boundaries of a high school precludes the necessity to perhaps make modifications to the capital improvement program. And I believe we've already had discussions in our work group and continue. And for the last couple years, we have seen a West County elementary school sit in our capital budget inclusive of this year. As a result of the redistricting, we will now have met the criteria for the state to fund this. A new elementary school means that the temporary displacements will be made whole. And I appreciate the skepticism, and until I see the shovel in the ground, it's not going to happen because of the angst with Crofton High School. But the fact is that we were faced with an MGT study and former superintendents who did not embrace the necessity and recognize it. Complicating that were years of the county perhaps, I would argue, underrepresenting the development numbers that were taking place. That has since been resolved as well. We now have to make the best decision for a new high school. And we have in the past gone non-contiguous. And we have in the past changed the natural boundaries of the school. But redistricting is its very definition means that some people will have to move. I've spent the last several years, not the last several months or less than a year, working on this issue and working with the residents. And there is no correct answer. Option 2, LJ, which was, I'd say, probably 90% vetted by the committee. There were modifications made before it was presented and put in as one of our options. And option 3 that is presented for us received no support from the committee, recognizing that spreading a little bit of the pain is not going to result in a positive, healthy outcome. We have to break a cycle here. And the cycle, I believe, is best served broken at the very first redistricting that we are going to be having. And that means making that hard decision. And the hard decision for me means that I will be voting in option 1. Option 1 does have an increase of impact on very specific schools. But the fact is, we have a plan, and I do have faith in our staff, and I do have faith in our collective ability to move that ball in the right direction. I have faith in our delegation that they understand that our development will continue to increase. And I do disagree with my fellow member that development has stopped and is no longer occurring to any significance in Crofton. I spent the last 2 years in my former job working collectively with every single resident in Crofton over these large developments that will continue to increase. And so to placate one in the interest of another is not what our mission is. And specific to that, redistricting a high school is the #1 mission. We have to go back to what we are here for. We have the ability to set up a new process, if we so choose, to go through an Arundel cluster redistricting and redistribute. It is my understanding that we have schools that are under capacity that are in equal distance for the villas. We have schools that are under capacity that they can almost pretty much walk to if the sidewalk were ever completed by the developer between Law Chapel and the Four Seasons and Sunshine, which I understand we're getting closer to. But there's going to be more townhouse developments right there next to the villas. And we have to say, for that area may be small in number, but it's going to get larger. And we have schools that have very limited capacity. And as Ms. Ellis had pointed out in her pictures, I thank her for bringing them, because they make a couple of my points that I would have otherwise just spoken to by words. Crofton really has already seen their share of additions. And it is now time for us to look at making renovations to meet the needs of the Arundel cluster in the Arundel cluster system, not to temporarily burden off a brand new cluster that isn't even born yet. The design and the size was a negotiated agreement between the school board and the prior administration. That is something that is not of our purview. And it is with the idea of community-based high schools. We're sitting here talking about transportation times and how we want to reduce them. That means that we need to move forward with a strong, stable plan. The committee, no committee is perfect in how they are, the people that are chosen. And there is a rational number of what works well and what does not work well. I think that we could, after this process, with the willingness of the administration, work to improve ourselves. I always want to work to improve ourselves. We encourage our students to do so, our teachers and our staff, and I think that includes our current processes. And I think that could help in future discussions for redistricting. But we have coming down the pike not one additional high school, but at least 2 in the very near future. We have to set a standard that rises above the normal kick the can, placate the loud, and that should start here. And I'm willing to make that hard leadership decision. we will not have the opportunity to go back and do very much more to Crofton Middle School. And the cafeteria with those kids in the other nice room sounds all sweet and dandy until we look at the socialization intent of how we have lunches, and I have to question what these kids look to be just kind of thrown off to the side. And we're proposing, what, adding another, 20, 30 more kids? That's not a significant number for the capacity of the Arundel Middle School cafeteria compared to the Crofton Middle School cafeteria. This is about a quality of education. And I understand that the configurations of every single one of our schools is different because they were built at different moments in time, as such as our new buildings will be too. And what Crofton High School will look different, I'm sure, than Old Mill, than will of Meade as well. But we need to recognize and work with what we have. And the fact is, Crofton has gone through redistricting with Nantucket, I believe, up to 5 times in the last 10 years or similar. Don't quote my number, but it's pretty darn close. And the adoption of 2 and 3 will force probably that issue to occur once again. How many more times do they have to bear that burden? They've spent the last 15 years at least on a bus most days each way 45 minutes. I think they serve their time. And to differentiate between 5 and 10 minutes when these people have traveled all that distance for all those years. And yes, I've walked across the street of Crofton Parkway because that is one of the natural dividing lines. And you don't want to be in Crofton Middle School in 8th grade when those kids have to break up and separate, I can tell you. We've got to stop the cycle of the Band-Aids, and we know that every single board has always done the best with the optics that they had in front of them, and we cannot do any more than that. But I honestly don't, when I look at the data, find a compelling enough case to discount our committee, our Citizen Advisory Committee's recommendation. And I cannot dismiss the fact that nobody actually supported option 3. And it was used, I believe, more as a demonstration of if you wanted to share the love a little bit, this is kind of what it would look like. I think it would have gotten some votes in round 2 if it had any play there. Option 2, probably I would have taken a little more serious if it had not been modified and then not redirected back to the citizenry. We have an obligation to take those things very seriously, and although we do not have to take the recommendation of our citizens, when our administration and our citizens, with all the expert information, come to that conclusion, and the conclusion that I have found in my ground experience there, option 1 does rise to the level of best meeting the needs of our mission of establishing a new high school boundary. I am happy to work all day long on making sure that our capital budget better meets these needs as a result of this outcome. I am happy to work hand in hand with our Arundel cluster system to do what is necessary to make it whole. But when I look at ripping up meadows, because to be clear, I was one of the people working directly with that athletic association, going to elementary school, figuring out how to make sure that this new high school keeps our kids in their athletic programs without it being diminished. And Gork Park's getting expansions. We've got Bell Branch. We're doing very well in that capacity. And to see that ripped up just a couple years after the taxpayers paid for it, to me, does not speak about the best interest of that community. There's a reason why we have in schools as we can, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, that we have try to manage with 2 playgrounds if it's possible, and taking an older playground and reusing it and repurposing it so that the younger kids have a different playground environment to the older kids is definitely a benefit and an asset. We're talking about taking away hard assets that are already there, just put in place, in a very strained, confined area. If the event of an emergency were to occur, that narrow little lane there with those buses and everything else, I mean, where do those parents go? We're talking about adding parents to the campus. And I would suspect that the farther out you go, just like at South River High School, we tend to have more Crofton parents picking up their kids than anything else because they're the farthest away, and when they have an appointment or something, they don't have the time to wait for the kids. I know that neighborhood very well, and I can tell you that it was never designed to handle multiple buses and multiple parent pickups, and I do know for a fact that anytime you go to reconfigure for capacity in a parking environment, particularly in a commercial or industrial or public use facility, the county is going to want us to do a thing or two, and that comes with a cost. The staff has put on record that we could be looking at maybe $2 million in those renovations, and how quickly should those renovations occur. And so we're talking about that could be used, to be clear, as a down payment for the feasibility for the addition or perhaps even a renovation to Arundel Middle School. It could also be used likewise to possibly accelerate at the state level the funding for West County Elementary. And so are we talking about a Band-Aid that is going to inhibit and become a natural barrier for the very improvements that West County so desperately needs? We need to go beyond the immediate and look to the long term. And option 1 does that as well. I've read every single email, and I understand the raises of concerns of diversity, and I'm happy to work with the community to figure something out. And whether that be Mr. Grandin's amendment of grandfathering of option 4 or something similar to work with staff, I'm right there to encourage that to occur. But I do not see that as a cause. There is nothing in the process that identified any targets that could have possibly been implied. The people that live there are the people that live there, and it is very unfortunate. I know from a real estate perspective it's god-awful, and there is no easy solution, but I would tell the real estate folks in a few years you're going to have a brand new elementary school to sell. And you will also have a high school now because of this new Crofton High School, a high school that's no longer exceeding capacity and busting out in the seams. But one is the right size, for the community. Community schooling is where the nation is going and meets the model of all means all. And when we start picking one to the other, not arbitrarily, but based on isolated temporary solutions, I think we would definitely be remiss in our actions. Option 1 is, in my opinion, in the opinion of staff, in the opinion of the majority of the people affected, the choice. And it will be my choice tonight. But I can assure you that regardless of what the outcome is, I'm going to work and make it work for everybody, regardless of what we vote on tonight. And I am committed to do what we need to do to continue to make progress, to make it better for everyone. And I just want to, in conclusion, thank the staff. I will tell you that, we haven't done a new high school in many, many years, and these guys have worked their butts off. And we challenged them with a lot of questions, and the communities challenged them with a lot of questions. And it all needed to happen immediately. We came on board, and this process was already to the 2/3, 3/4 mark. And I know that they did their best, and I want to thank them for their willingness to take the time to explain things to the community, especially, not just us. Because whether or not they liked what the answer was, they did get the correct answers as it related to the questions that they asked. So I want to thank you, Dr. Arlotto, and to you and your staff, because I will tell you, I was there for, those meetings of the community, and they stayed there until every question was answered, to be clear, late at night, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I know we want to be timely tonight, but I do think that our staff is well worth the additional minute or two. So thank you guys once again.
Thank you. Mr. Leib and then Ms. Antoine.
Thank you, Mr. President. We, the board, we've been privileged to hear testimony from a great number of people in our community at board meetings, at public hearings. We've all been receiving hundreds and hundreds of emails about every position that you could think of has been advocated for or advocated against. I don't think there's anything we'll hear tonight from any of us that'll be anything new that we haven't heard before. So I try and look at it very concisely. The charge of the redistricting committee was to establish attendance boundaries for the new Crofton High School. That was it. The redistricting committee's recommended plan was adopted by the superintendent of schools with some minor adjustments and submitted to this board for his formal recommendation. It is now referred to in option 1 tonight. As I see it, option 1 establishes a sustainable feeder system for the new Crofton area high school. Clear boundary lines are established that should not need to be adjusted in the near future. It minimizes the number of students redistricted. It ensures students remain within their feeder system for their entire school career. And it provides flexibility to address future overcrowding without involving another feeder system. So to try and come right to the point, I will support option 1. Thank you.
Ms. Sanchwein.
I have been blessed to brag with the Department of Defense. I've been blessed to move when the Navy said move. And almost 21 years of service, we did the mission first because the mission was the priority. And in doing that mission, quite often, lives are disturbed. I lived with a life that was disturbed. He had to be without both his parents because both of them served, and they both served during wartime. At one point of his life, he wasn't even in the same state with us. It has an impact. I want to share with all of you that whatever you shared with us, especially with me, it didn't go in vain. I still have to bring an unbiased experience to this as though I never had these other experiences. And it has not been easy. But one thing I would request that my board members do, in whatever your final decisions are, because even when she calls that roll, you can still change your minds, that you not downplay diversity in this situation. Diversity for this system has always been at the forefront of our considerations, and it should not change now. Thank you.
Ms. Ellis.
I'm sorry, I just have to speak to a couple points that were brought up. The mention of the term community school, community-based school was used several times, and all means all. If you ask someone in the area, where are the stores in Crofton? Is there a Target in Crofton? Yeah, Crofton has a Target. Crofton has Wegmans. Crofton. That's for people who live in the area. The Wall Chapel Town Center area is Crofton. We have heard that testimony from the residents who live there. And when you say, when we continue to use the words all means all, I struggle to see how we can make a decision to cut this community off from Crofton and send their kids on a commute that's 4 times greater than what they're doing now and burdening them with childcare issues that they have not had to deal with. As far as making the hard decisions and impacting certain schools, when I was talking about developments that are coming down the pike, I'm talking about already approved developments. So if there's more coming in Crofton that's already approved, it's not been on the table. I know that Two Rivers and Odenton Town Center are there. They're happening. They're building. So that's what I was referring to. And when we talk about, we have plans for an elementary school, and we can do things to, we can do improvements on Arundel Middle School. There's families, students who will be going through those schools will not be impacted by those things that are happening in the future. So we have to make decisions for them now. I again want to speak to the committee who developed the redistricting committee and say that I feel that they worked very well in developing options and exploring them. And that to me is the greatest thing, the greatest work that was done by that committee. I don't think we can put a whole lot of weight into the final vote because people voted along community lines, as would be expected. A couple more things. It was mentioned about ripping up meadows. Again, I showed a picture of where they wouldn't have to do that at Crofton Meadows. Nobody wants to put up portables, but they're going. They're coming to schools no matter what option we do. And then it was mentioned about what would happen if we had to break up students in a hall in Crofton Middle School. Again, I was there yesterday observing. I would be much more fearful of that situation in the Arundel Middle School hallway. It's never an ideal situation, and I never want it to happen. But I would be very worried if that happened in the middle of that hallway in Arundel Middle School. So in summary, I agree that this is about quality of education, and I refuse to impact elementary students, their entire elementary and or middle school students, their entire middle school career by grossly overpopulating Piney Orchard and Arundel Middle. This is, when we say this is about establishing the boundary lines for Crofton High School, it should never have been interpreted to mean we do that on the backs of other students. We have to come up with the best plan for all students. There is no perfect plan. And look, I'm from Crofton. I grew up in Crofton. Many of my kids' best friends are in Crofton. My parents just moved from there about 5 years ago. Their house was the hangout. They had a pool there. Crofton is my roots, and I'm delighted that there's not a single neighborhood in Crofton that is not going to go to Crofton High School. I was baffled when I heard that that was a possibility during the redistricting process. But that's not the case. Crofton has their school. Crofton's going to their school. I've mentioned it, I don't know how many times, how it was talked about when I was at, at Arundel. Anyway, option 3 is the fairest option. And while I ran for office for a particular district, I sit here in this seat thinking about the students of Anne Arundel County. And this is the fairest option. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hummer.
I just want to address one thing. So a few of us here on the board have been here back when we approved the Crofton High School. And I can say that for me personally, it was a concern for me when we approved Crofton High School that we would be creating a white high school, that it would not be diverse. And that was something that I was very concerned about. So once we went through this process, I've looked at the numbers very closely to see that, because I think it's so important for our schools and for this area. All the numbers historically going up show that the whole Crofton Arundel area is becoming more and more diverse, which I think is a huge strength for all the students that are there. And when I look at the 3 plans, I looked at the demographic numbers between the 3 plans, and it is the diversity numbers are changed by less than 1% between each plan. So it's not a significant alteration for diversity. So I just want to point that out there, that for me that is something I've looked at closely, but when I compare the 3 plans together, that is a really the numbers do not show for anyone that there's going to be a significant difference in the diversity. So I want to put that out there. And I see that the two high schools are fairly close when it comes to diversity numbers, and I think Crofton is only going to become more and more diverse as time goes on, because we're seeing that in the neighborhoods that come through. Nantucket and Crofton Meadows Elementary are incredibly diverse schools and are only becoming more so. So I think that's going to be a strength for both areas, no matter what plan we decide, is that I think that whole area is going to continue to be a great model for diversity and inclusion for all of our students.
Okay. Is there any further board comment? Seeing none. At this time, Mrs. Connolly, we're going to move with a roll call vote, stipulating options, and any option that receives 5 votes will be the designation. Please call the roll.
For option 1 is the...
No. Each member is going to indicate what their option choice is. If one option does not receive 5 votes on the first roll call, we'll move again and do another round until, and there may be some discussion in between.
Thank you.
We'll keep going until we hit 5.
Thank you. Starting with Mr. Grannon this evening. Mr. Grannon.
I support option 1 with option 4.
Ms. Corkadell.
I support option 1 with option 4 and option 4.
Ms. Hummer.
Option 1.
Ms. Urea.
Option 1.
Ms. Antoine.
Option 1 with 4.
Ms. Scholheim.
Option 3.
Mr. Leib.
Option 1.
Ms. Ellis.
Option 3 with 4.
So for option 1, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gillen.
Option 1.
Option 1. And do you want me to count with the plus 4?
Yes.
As a separate number?
Yes.
Okay, so option 1, just option 1 is 4. 4 votes. Option
It's 4
1.
votes. It's 4 votes.
Oh, just option 1.
Just option 1 is 4 votes.
Sorry.
Option 1 plus 4 is 3 votes. And option 3 is 1 vote, and option 3 plus 4 is 1 vote. So it would be 4, 3, 1, 1.
Okay. Yeah, so the 2 highest votes were what?
The 2 highest votes were option 1 and option 1 plus 4.
4. Okay. Is there any discussion at this point?
No. We can have discussion.
Ms. Ellis.
Option 4, I had mentioned earlier, I guess I want to make a motion to amend it, because I don't believe it addresses transportation, correct?
Point of
Can we
order,
not?
Mr. President. I do not believe that once the votes have called that we can amend any one option, because they're already on the table, and that would dynamically change the entire vote.
Yeah, that's
Could we get consultation, please, sir?
It may be a moot point if there's no second.
Correct. At this point, there was, just clarify whether we can, and then, certainly we can see if there's a second.
I believe, Darren Burns, Board Counsel for the record, I believe the question that you asked me to come up here is a parliamentary question based on the posture of your motions. As I understood your vote that you've just taken as a matter of record on your ballot or your roll call process, 2 of your options received the most votes. Those options are, in fact, now what's before you, as I understand the method you all fixed. So option 1 and option 1 plus 4 is what's now before you. And I believe that you're about to take more discussion on them. Whether those can be amended by motion made and properly seconded and discussed is a different issue. You can't go back in time, though, and alter what's now been approved, or voted on as your top 2 options. Proceeding, you have your top 2 options. You're about to discuss them. And that, I'm not going to tell you that you can't move for amendments.
Okay, great. Certainly, I understand Robert's rules will accept it. I just want to make sure for redistricting purposes.
One and 1 plus 4, what you're moving forward on from here.
As originally proposed.
As proposed. And again, from this point forward, you're about to discuss what you voted on.
Because it would dynamically change what the initial vote would be if you were to amend the options at this time, and would force, we would either have to go back from scratch, or because then we're not voting for the same things again, we're voting for amended versions.
Well, and the other thing to consider too,
and that would not.
Well, the other thing to consider too
we would have to go
is
back and open up for public testimony as well on the amendment.
Yeah, beyond your parliamentary issue, which I think we just addressed, and I hope you'll take my advice on that. You are where you are with 1 and 1 plus 4. They are what they were when they went to the vote. Beyond that, if you start amending the options within 1 and 1 plus 4, you do invite the issue of whether or not additional testimony is required.
Right.
Because that's what went to hearing. That's what now you're talking about. You also have to just be careful with this. You do have an April 30th deadline.
I have a question.
Hold on. So you had the floor because of your point of order. Does this answer satisfy you?
One follow-up question, Mr. Burns,
yes.
Please. Because I'm not sure that I'm clear on understanding this, but if we were to amend the contents of the options themselves, we are now changing what we're voting on, and therefore would negate by definition our votes that just took place, which I do not believe was the spirit and intent of what the original motion of how we were conducting ourselves that we started off with, that was approved by consent.
Yeah, you fixed your method that you were going to discuss.
Correct.
Your options, including any amendments. You moved past that phase. You then had your roll call.
So the moving forward of this would change our methodology, would change the actual options, would diminish and limit testimony because the public was not made aware of a dynamic change of it, and therefore change the integrity of the vote that we just took as well, because it changes what we're voting on fundamentally and substantively. So I just wanted to make, is that correct? Or minus my conjecture?
Yeah, two different issues. From a parliamentary standpoint, you captured it accurately. From a substantive standpoint, you fixed your method of voting, do a roll call, in which when you got to the top two, if one of those options, let's just, as an example, as you fixed your method, as reflected in your consensus on having a roll call of all options being on the table, had one of those received an 8-to-1 vote in favor of it, this discussion would be over. That would have been the prevailing option.
No.
Your agreement was that if you move forward with less than 5 votes on 2 options, those will be discussed in your next round of discussion. Whether or not you could amend those, I would think that you're probably then going against the method that you chose to vote these in.
A point of order for Mrs. Schallheim.
Oh, okay. As I am reading option 4, there is no stipulation that we are automatically busing anyone anywhere. It's my understanding then that that would fall under Dr. Arlotto's purview to make that decision, because it doesn't state that clearly. So I think, right? Am I right, Dr. Arlotto? Can you help me out here? Okay.
I'm not sure that I can.
Okay, so
I'll let you finish your comment.
Yes, here's my question. Okay, so as I'm reading option 4, there's no conversation and there's no text in option 4 that talks about transportation. So if option 1 plus option 4 were to go through, it's my understanding that it would then fall to you and your staff to decide whether or not you're going to bus children under option 4. Is that accurate, or am I missing the boat?
That's not my interpretation. My interpretation of the discussion at the time when option 4 was proffered, discussed by this board and agreed to bring to public testimony was that transportation would be provided for those families that chose to remain to grandfather themselves. That was my understanding of the discussion at the time. I don't disagree with you that it doesn't say that in the verbiage here. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying my understanding was, and staff's understanding was, that this would include transportation.
So the cost that we were given, Mr.
Point of
Chiknovich-
order, we're discussing the point of order, not the merits of the option, I believe, unless Mr. Gilliland has removed that and has reconciled that and is moving back to discussion.
Can I just finish my sentence?
It would be almost impossible for us to really get to the fiscal impact because there are so many options, right? Within one cul-de-sac, one family could choose to remain at their school and the other family who went to that school could choose to go to a different. So it's very difficult for us to come up with a finite number for you to contemplate.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Cheers.
Okay. Ms. Ellis originally had the floor before the first point of order was made, so I'm going to defer back to you and then Mr. Grannon.
Okay, so if help me out, colleagues, if I'm understanding. We cannot amend option 4 to address transportation. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly? Is anyone hearing it otherwise?
That was the advice of the legal counsel.
Thank you. There were conversations going on, and I was making sure I understood correctly.
That's why I asked a second time.
Right. And then, and so voting on this, we're voting on an expectation that there will be transportation provided with option 4. Yes. And now that option 1 is the only other option, we're looking at sending buses into 1038B and 1038C for 2 different feeder systems.
Okay, Mr. Grannon.
I'll just briefly note that my understanding is consistent with Dr. Arlotto's understanding, but I think we can take option 4 just on the face of what it says. If it doesn't say anything, then that means that the district's default policy on busing would apply, and if the students live whatever it is, 1.5 miles, whatever that distance is, then the default policies that have been approved by this board over and over again would apply. So if we just take it as that, we'll be fine. Having said that, I would encourage, basically, I think Ms. Antoine was helpfully suggesting this, given how the votes went. Option 1 and 4 got 3 votes. Option 1 got 4 votes. Ms. Schalheim, you voted for option 3. If you were to change your vote to option 1 and 4, that would take it to 4. And Ms. Ellis, you voted for options 3 and 4. If you were also to change your vote to options 1 and 4, we would have the 5 votes, and we'd have pretty much largely a consensus decision because everybody would be at least supporting option 1, and the majority of the board, 5, would be supporting option 4. So I prevail upon you to do that now that options 2 and 3 are clear that they don't have any chance of getting board approval.
Yeah, I want option 1 and 4. I'll change my vote.
Okay, we're not voting yet, but thank you for sharing. Mr. Grannon, were you finished?
Yes, but I actually did have the understanding that members could just change their votes.
We can, but we were going to call for another round of roll call.
But that's your view, sir.
All right, Mrs. Hummer.
Yeah, so I just, I want to share that my concerns with option 4 in that when we've heard from a number of people who wanted option 3, and their main argument that they made for staying in option 3 is they wanted to be a part of the Crofton feeder system. Option 4, they do not remain in the Crofton feeder system. They will remain there for elementary and middle school, but they will go to Arundel High School. They will not go to Crofton High School. And so at the end of their middle school time, just as they are now, you know, in the current configuration where Crofton High School is split between 2 high schools, those students will now be going to Arundel High School. So that does not give the long-term the not so long term for some of them whose kids are in middle school, that doesn't give them what they want for high school. It also is only for existing students as of January 23rd. So there's a family that has a kindergartner this year and a 3-year-old. Their kindergartner is not going to have this choice because they are not an existing student. Only their kindergartner will be able to stay at the Crofton schools, but their 3rd grader, when they get to 5th grade, will not. They will be zoned for Piney Orchard because it says existing students. So that adds, I don't know that the people in option 3 realize that or are aware of what that could be to have through. And then even though this is, we just as a board approved at the last meeting, I believe, the RFP for transportation, where we're really looking at how can we improve our transportation system, make it more efficient so that we can look at options for making our start times healthier, to making it more friendly. This option we could have for 8 years. We could have 2 buses coming to the same cul-de-sac to pick up children next door to each other to go to 2 separate schools for just a handful of students. And that right there is a significant transportation inefficiency. Also, the cost estimates that we have for this over the course of those 8 years, if students continue to, it could be upwards of over $2 million just for this one section of students. And that's a significant cost. But my main concern is that for the folks that want option 3, this does not keep them in Crofton High School, and it doesn't necessarily keep their children together. However, they could still, we have an out-of-area transfer process, and students can still apply for this, and that's something that the board can consider when it comes times for families without mandating with the option 4 and mandating the transportation, which will be incredibly inefficient for an extended up to 8 years of time. So those are my concerns with option 4.
Okay, Ms. Urea.
I call the question.
Okay. We're going to do second. All right, all in favor?
Good to know.
Say aye.
Good.
Opposed, no. The ayes have
Aye.
it. We now have a roll call vote again. Ms. Connolly.
Mr. Grannon?
Option 1 and 4.
Ms. Corcato?
1 and 4.
Ms. Hummer?
1.
Ms. Urea?
1.
Ms. Antoine?
Option 1 with 4.
Ms. Shawheim?
Confused again. Yeah, I'm sorry. I want option 1 and 4.
Just option 1.
No.
1 and 4, please.
1 and 4. Mr. Live?
1.
I've worked very hard on this issue. And I have to do what I continuously say that I do, which is to vote in the best interest of the students of Anne Arundel County. And I have to look at the total picture. I'm voting option 1.
Mr. Gilliland?
Option 1.
That's 5 for option 1. 4 for option 1 plus 4.
Okay, option 1 passes.
Option 1 passes.
Item 4.02 is the 2019-2020 school year calendar. It's an information to action item. Is there a motion to move this from information to action?
I so moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We now have an action item. And we have a staff presentation. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Dr. Arlotto, can we have your recommendation, please?
Yes, sir. I recommend the board concur with the calendar committee's recommendations.
Is there a motion? And a second? Okay, and now presentation, and then we'll have board discussion.
Good evening, President Gilliland, members of the board, Dr. Arlotto. For the record, Bob Mosier, Chief Communications Officer. I'll allow my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Teresa Tudor, Senior Manager for School and Family Partnerships.
Jason Dykstra, Executive Director of Instructional Data.
So what we're going to do tonight is take you through the results of the survey that you directed Dr. Arlotto to have staff create, and then just provide you with that. So the survey was open from the 27th of March through the 5th of April, available in English and Spanish, and it really asked two questions. Do respondents want to add 4 days to the end of the school year, with those days being utilized elsewhere? And if so, how do they want those days to be allocated? We made clear in the survey instructions and releases that the start of the school year would remain September 3rd. So we had 26,730 responses, 72% of those parents and guardians, 23% school system employees, 2.6% students, and about the same community members. The results across feeder systems, pretty spread out. We asked this question purely to make sure that we had a good breadth of representation, and as you see by that slide there, we did. We asked in questions 3 and 4, remember when we put this survey out, the General Assembly was still in session, and the bill that would have allowed school systems to open on either Easter Monday or President's Day as an option was still alive. So we asked this question. That bill did not pass, but just for your information, these are the way those results broke down. You see Easter Monday overwhelmingly no, and President's Day about 50-50. But again, that bill did not pass. Question 5 asked the first real substantive question, which was, do you want to add the 4 days to the end of the year and use those days elsewhere? So 62% of those who responded, 16,600 or so, said no, and a little over 10,000 said yes. And that broke down this way by respondent group. So if you take the 62-38 from the first slide, you see with parents and employees fairly in the same range there. So that's the breakdown by respondent group. So folks who answered yes to the question of whether they wanted to add school days to the end and then use those days elsewhere were then given this question. And they were given 7 choices and asked to rank them in order. They had to fill in all 7, and they could not duplicate a rank. So you had to rank them, 1 being your highest priority, 7 being your lowest priority. Folks who answered no to the question of extending the school year did not get this question. In essence, their rank for those things were 0, so they did not get this question. So this next slide shows you of how the high priority rankings went. So this slide shows you the number of people who ranked each of the options first in the ranking of 1 to 7. So you see the highest there being Easter spring break, then inclement weather, Rosh Hashanah, teacher convention, and on. The next slide shows you those who ranked each option lowest in their priority order. So again, a little bit of a more even distribution there, but pretty clear to see. Then we had to create, and I thank Mr. Dykstra and his team for helping us do this, then we had to create a way to rank each of those options, because you could pick them 1 through 7. So instructional data developed this ranking, or used a ranking average, I should say. And so we developed this hypothetical option so you could see in an easy way how it worked. Since 1 was your highest priority, if you had 1,000 people and there were 4 potential responses, and you ranked an item first, you would assign that 1 point. If you ranked it second, you would assign it 2 points. And so you see the breakdown there. If 638 people ranked it first, right, that's 638 points, so to speak. So if you, in that example, if you add them up, you get 1,690 points. You divide by your 1,000 responses, and so you get a ranking average of 1.69. So the lower the ranking average, the higher the priority. right? So because if everybody ranked the same item 1, it would have a ranking average of 1.0. So the lower the ranking average, the higher the priority. And that comes into play when you see this slide. So this is the ranking average of the 7 options that the folks who wanted to extend the school year got. And so Easter spring break comes out as the highest priority. It has the lowest ranking average, and you see the way that is spread out across those 7 options. And then finally, to help gauge instructional and workforce impact, we asked respondents, we gave them a set of days and said, if school were open on these days, would you either not send your child or not come to work? And so we've grayed out Easter Monday and President's Day because those are no longer options. But that gives you a sense of essentially what absentee rates would be, right? Folks who would not send their children to school or would not attend work. So with all that in mind, the second piece of the board's direction to the superintendent was to convene the calendar committee. And so the superintendent recommended to the calendar committee to leave the 2019-20 calendar intact, inclusive of the religious observance changes that this board adopted in January and February. Ms. Tudor convened the calendar committee. She and I sat in on that. Mr. Dykstra was there as well. And the calendar committee concurred with the superintendent's recommendation and then added a second recommendation, which was to conduct a survey next September prior to convening the calendar committee again to discuss the 2020-21 calendar, specifically to gauge public opinion on restoring a week-long Easter spring break. So that, in a short order, is how the survey results broke down, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
So we've got a number of questions among the board, and then we do have some public comment cards as well. We'll go with Mrs. Ellis and then Mrs. Shawheim. Oh, Mrs. Shawheim. Whoops. Okay, Mrs. Shawheim. Yeah, sorry.
I simply move that we close on September 30th, 2019, thereby restoring a 14-year AACPS tradition.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Antoine, your light is on, but is that on this motion? Okay. Discussion on this motion then. You want to talk?
Rosh Hashanah was removed by the board on November 18th, 2015, starting with the 2016-2017 school year during its November 18th, 2015 meeting. This occurred before the school executive order was implemented and back when AACPS started in August. At that time, the calendar committee's recommendation was to keep Rosh Hashanah. However, the board at that time were more interested in balancing the number of non-instructional days before winter break versus after winter break. And ultimately, they decided to remove Rosh Hashanah simply and solely in favor of an extra spring break day. I want to note that this was done without prior consideration of the local community and without parent input or without sending out any sort of survey. And in fact, at that time, Ms. Tudor stated, quote, not to survey because you're only going to get a small fraction of the people answering. You're not going to get enough people that it's going to say, well, half of our county, because we're never going to get that many. 4,000, still only 2,000 are going to say one way or another probably, just from our past history over the last 12 years of surveys, unquote. She also stated at that time, quote, if you ask me to do another survey, we're not going to get a lot of response. The most we've ever had on any survey ever in Anne Arundel County was about 4,000 people, unquote. This is why I was, more than a little bit skeptical to see so many respondents to our most recent survey, and also really surprised to see that the student voice was so quiet. I shared my concerns with our board officers, Mr. Gillen and Ms. Urea, as well as with Dr. Alato. So I worry about using the survey or any other singular data point as a determinant factor. This is not a scientific poll. I also worry greatly about whether or not our calendar committee is representative of our diverse community, and if it's, and if its members' views, such as the one back in 2015 to keep Rosh Hashanah, if they're really taken into account. I can tell you that immediately following the decision in 2015, every rabbi in Anne Arundel County signed on to a letter, and you have that letter, and you have its response. And it says, in part, that for many years we've celebrated the open-minded commitment of the school board to the highest standards of pluralism. So I would echo that. This was a tradition in Anne Arundel County for more than a decade. The calendar is also an instructional tool. It sets the tone and tenor of the year. So we need to understand what kind of message it sends, and whether or not it contradicts the strategic plans, our strategic plan, and the indicators and strategies of that plan. This is about not inhibiting one's ability to observe the religion, an argument used in Maryland case law establishing schools' ability to close on days such as these, and this is about restoring what was in place for 14 years. So some of the, if you're going to honor that diversity, if you're really going to say all means all, then decisions need to be made by the board, not necessarily be the first choices of the majority, because those actions that honor diversity have the greatest impact on our minority population. So some of the indicators and the strategies of the strategic plan include the deployment of an inclusive component. Diversity is invited, nurtured, and celebrated. And then there's various indicators. If you go on to our website, you can read them for yourself. And I just really implore our board to restore what was lost and what was in place for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Antwine.
As always, I thank you guys tremendously for the work that you've done. I do have major concerns with the survey. It seemed to indicate an either or when it came to these considerations, which I believe may have skewed some of the responses. I also understand that the law did not change when this survey came out. So my recommendation is that we go back and consider the changes of the law, consider the things that we are allowed to consider, and they're not necessarily in consideration of religious observances, but rather the education and the educational outfit of the individual student. I also request that this survey, because of the work that went into it, not be completely dismissed, but the considerations within them be reconsidered, and that survey be used only as a reference and not a determining point. Thank you.
The survey is just a tool for you to use. It's ultimately, the calendar is your decision. I applaud you, though, because you have been so bold and outspoken to say that you want to listen to the will of the people, you want to listen to your constituents. The people have spoken. The people, thank you, Ms. Schauheim, for bringing that up, that we've never had any survey with this many responses. I feel like that's because they believe that you are going to listen to them. They strongly have heard this board say, tell us what you want. We want to hear your voice. So they have given you their voice. And when I talk to the calendar committee, and let me tell you, Ms. Schauheim, that calendar committee is very diverse. That calendar committee has representations from many religions. But we don't ask the religious. Lots of times it'll come out in discussion. We can't ask that. It is set by your board policy, and it's enforced exactly that. I never pick anybody on the calendar committee. The bargaining units, they pick their own people. The parent groups, they pick their own people. I send out an invitation. This is how many each group gets. They send me the names and the contact information. CRAS sends their students. It's all, the students decide themselves on the two people they want to come from CRAS. So that's how the committee is set up. We don't go and handpick anyone. But when we met with the calendar committee and we brought them back in, I really was sure, I'm going to tell you, I thought they're going to tell us they want spring break because they've been pretty adamant. The teachers union has, really felt that they need that break. That's not what they said. They did say they want it reconsidered, but they said what they're hearing in their schools, what they're hearing in their communities, the parents, what they're hearing loudly, is do not change the calendar for next year. It is set. People have made plans. Don't add days. Don't take away days. Leave the calendar. And then do what you want in 2021 when you're starting fresh again. So that is what the committee discussed it at length. Everybody got to talk. Everybody got to say anything they wanted. But one of the people, actually was one of the teachers, said, I feel really strongly that the board has asked people to give input, and we as the calendar committee need to look at what the input was. So if we ask our parents and our community something, we need to listen to it. And they're telling us what they want. Don't do anything to next year's. So that's why they came up with that. It was very robust discussion, and that's why they added the caveat, because they do feel when they looked at the numbers and the surveys and all, and some of them said they went out and talked to other parents, they went out and talked to other teachers, that they heard strongly the same thing. We'd like to see it. Don't do it next year. We already have plans for the end of the year. We already have that in place.
But I'd like to.
Sorry. I still got them.
Sorry.
No worries. I thank you for that input, Ms. Tudor. I want to emphasize, though, this went out to the entire county, and maybe what those groups did here, I believe you, and when you say this is what they heard. But I'm also hearing things. I'm also being called to the table and to meetings and community this and that, and those communities are very disappointed that certain aspects of even that survey kind of pitted one religion against the other. Do you want Diwali or do you want?
That's just because you all had discussed that.
I understood.
I didn't create the survey. The survey was created by people who know what they're doing.
What I'm sharing is, yes, ma'am. What I'm sharing is this: because of that, the results may have been skewed. And that makes that survey a difficult tool for us to utilize to make an informed decision. So I commend, again, the work that goes into it. I also request that we introduce, now that the law has changed, and I'm requesting, well, of course the board will have to make the final decision, but if you all are to go back and to redo this, despite the recommendation, I request that you open it up to new committee members as well, so we have a new set of eyes on these decisions as well.
Okay. Mr. Gillen, may I just respond to one thing? Part of the direction of this board was to examine extending the school year up to 4 days. So that gives you a finite box. So when you have 7 possibilities or 12 possibilities or whatever the number is, and you only have 4 days, not everything fits in the box. Had the board said, see if you want to extend it 12 days, and you had 7 possibilities, right? Then that's a different discussion.
I agree with that, Mr. Moser. What I disagree with is the either-or concept in that survey. The 4 days can be applied, and we can call them all professional development 4 days, right? It did not have to include, do you want Diwali, or do you want this, or do you? I even saw one question about Veterans Day. It gave them choices, and because of that, I believe it would skew that understanding. Also, in terms of law, as I've learned, it doesn't align with what the law says we do when we consider changes to these calendars. So the survey, to me, is a great reference. It most certainly, at almost 30,000, speaks to the will of many of our constituents and our parents and otherwise, our students. However, the results are what I'm concerned with, and how we generate those results and how we interpret those results.
Mr. Grannon and then Ms. Schallheim.
I didn't write the survey, so I kind of don't want to argue about this, but as I understand the question as it was described by Mr. Moser and the rest of the team there, it was asking the survey respondents to say which days would they not send their child to school and which days would they themselves not go to work. So if we are to, for example, add a day being closed for Rosh Hashanah as we do for Yom Kippur now, which I support, by the way, we're not doing that to elevate Judaism or somehow choose one religion over another. We're doing that on the secular basis and based on some of these survey results on the numbers of students who would be missing school on that day. If we don't collect the data about which days the students wouldn't be coming, I think we're doing the community a disservice. So just once again, if we were to pass this today, if it gets a majority support of the board to close on the day that coincides with Rosh Hashanah, we're doing it on the secular and rational basis that an unacceptable number of students would miss school on that day, the same way that the legislature decided, for example, to close school on Christmas. Not because the legislature was elevating Christianity over any other religion, but the legislature was making the wise and practical decision that a lot of kids were not going to come to school if it were open on Christmas. That's the exact same logic that we'd be applying to this. So I don't want to debate the survey. I just want to make it clear, at least that's my intention as I vote to support closing on Rosh Hashanah. And I'm doing consistent with Maryland law.
Mr. Grant, if I can answer that. So we have data from student absences and teacher absences regarding Rosh Hashanah for the last 3 years, if you would like that.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Ms. Schallheim and then Ms. Corkadell.
I just have 2 points. One, next year we're closing school on a Monday, and our current law allows for up to 5 extra days past that without a waiver, and actually Senate Bill 128 removed all that anyway, so now it's back to us to establish a start and a stop date. I would argue closing on a Monday is what a waste, you know? So I'm with my motion, I am asking that we close on a Tuesday, and perhaps we'll actually get more attendance on that Monday and that Tuesday as a result.
Just as a say, for Monday, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I thought you just took a breath.
And in terms of, but also, like, if we have questions, we'll ask respectfully. We'll ask.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I thought we were supposed to share. I'm sorry.
So, and my other point is with regard to attendance. I will argue that this is not a scientific poll in any regard, and that I would also argue that after Rosh Hashanah was removed after being a non-instructional day for like 14 years, the attendance of our youth in this county at shul on Rosh Hashanah decreased significantly because those students were now having to choose between school and observance of their religion. And it says, it says very clearly in the law that we shouldn't we shouldn't advance or promote a religion, but we shouldn't inhibit it either. So for whatever that's worth for those here and listening, I am just reinstating what was lost. What was lost in favor of a spring break day that year, because there was way more, or at least slightly more, non-instructional days before winter break versus after in that year. Those arguments no longer hold now. I want to reinstate the tradition that we had in place.
If I could, just in case the board were not aware, because Ms. Schallheim brought up the subject of finishing school on a calendar on a Monday. So the MSDE allows for school systems to ask for a waiver if in any year your school year would end based on your calendar on a Monday, so you don't have to bring everybody back after a weekend when you're in the summer. So if in fact this calendar were to move forward and we were to finish in any year on a Monday, we would traditionally request a waiver to then end on the prior Friday in any given summer.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Okay. We'll go with Mrs. Corkadell, and then I no further lights at that point. I'd like to ask if we can move to public comment after Mrs. Corkadell.
Thank you, President Gilliland. I bear with me for a second because I created notes for myself because there's some legal and technicalities that I wanted to make sure, but it was based on the direction that we're going. I'm personally going to be supporting Ms. Schulheim's amendment. And I want to address the pure secular. I first want to once again reiterate my appreciation for you guys' continued support when we have these major issues. And I know that a survey is a major undertaking. And when we inject it, especially at this time of year, we know it can have a negative impact on our other surveys. So the willingness to do this to make sure that we are making the most informed decision is greatly appreciated. And I got to say, I'm overwhelmed by the response. And I do believe that Ms. Tudor is correct that our voices, we've said we want to hear you and we're being heard. I don't think there's anything more to be said about the survey questions themselves. Not being an expert in data and surveys, I hesitate to draw any conclusions that it was to our advantage or disadvantage. But as it relates to adding this date onto the calendar to coincide, I just want to say, make a couple points and maybe a little expanding on what Mr. Grannon has said. You know, every time, you know, we may have started as a school board decades and decades and decades ago, like Montgomery County did, 130 years ago, you know, with the starting of the Easter break, for example, which is a legal case study that I read over in preparation for tonight. And it has since become now a tradition. In other words, it transcends its original religious intent, and now is a tradition embedded in our culture and our society. And so the dancing around of, is it purely just for religious purposes, I do not believe is relevant anymore. But the question of relevancy is, do we restore a tradition that are decades and decades and decades and decades in the making? I can tell you from personal experience that I looked forward to that extra bump day, because the practicality is, and then I developed a reappreciation when my kids went from elementary school and eventually into high school, because when faced with these very daunting syllabi, especially in the transition years of 6 and of 9, and that junior year when you've stacked, we heard all these kids stacking in 6 and 7. I thought my daughter was pretty crazy with 5, and here I'm hearing 6 and 7 and 5.0s, and man, my mind's blown. And speaks droves to the quality of our education, clearly. But my point is that those were days of respite. I am not of Jewish faith, yet I do recognize that there's a need for us to, beyond the scope of one large lump sum in the summertime, to recharge. We just spent a considerable amount of time hearing testimony, and we're going to continue for the next up to 60 days in the discussion of class ranks, hear a lot more about the mental health. And it seems to me like we have a group of folks whose needs feel that they are no longer met. We have an opportunity here to add that little extra break for our kids to kind of recollect and get ready to face that year. We no longer have the parent-teacher conferences at the critical years in that first semester. And I know the one year that my son was having an issue, waiting until November just made it that much worse. I think we have an opportunity here, and what we choose to use for that day off, whether it's a true day off or an in-service, but we're proposing a true day off here, so I'll just speak to the motion, clearly would be for a beneficial secular matter. And no matter what the family chooses to do with that day off, they will benefit, they will recharge. We know that mental statistical facts are that small periodical breaks are more beneficial. And as we continue to impose more and more stress on these kids, I think we now have an opportunity to maybe add something to our wheelhouse and our toolbox as to how we address mental health. And so I see this as an opportunity, not just to restore tradition, but also to create a new opportunity. And I do want to reiterate what Mr. Grannon had said, because I think it is very important that this in no particular way indicates a support for one or to the other. And I believe our board has well demonstrated over the years a willingness
to try to accommodate. And one person's needs are different than the other. Whether the person is of faith or of none, we have an obligation equally and proportionately to all. The motion before us is for a particular day in the fall. And I think that day in the fall would be beneficial to everyone equally always. And whether or not you recharge with going to a synagogue, or your recharge is to take the kids and do one last fall hike up at Gunpowder State Park, that's your choice. But the fact is that every single person will benefit from that day off. The teachers will benefit, the students will benefit, and the community will by and large benefit. That doesn't mean everybody will, but in the by and large, I do believe. The numbers may not have tiered number one for that time of year in the fall, in September, but I will tell you that it was not sitting at last either. And I think that people understanding the restoration of such a tradition, whether it be for expanding a spring break, to sustaining our winter break, and revisiting some of our fall moments, I think that it well meets our strategic objectives. We are talking about developing global children and creating global citizens. And that means, what a better way to advance that purpose than to give them those opportunities that this tradition, as well as the others, have provided. And so I will be voting for this amendment to there, not to in any way, shape, or form slight the good hard work of the calendar committee, but in recognition of seeing an opportunity that we would be remiss if we did not consider.
Okay, if we can move to public comment right now. We have 5 cards, and I know some people have been waiting for a long time. Cindy Landis, Avery Landis, Ilana Schwartz, Joshua Schwartz, and Janet Norman. And we have one more seat if there's anybody else who did not sign up who would like to speak. And feel free to, anybody can start.
Hi, this is Cindy Landis. Thank you all for all your comments about the calendar. I'm here specifically because I am Jewish. It is Rosh Hashanah. I have a son in 7th grade and a daughter in high school who is 15 and a sophomore, and listening to those kids made me actually rethink my thoughts. A couple things that were said. Ms. Uriah at the beginning said she spoke about the principal at Meade High School and how he makes every student feel like they matter. And wouldn't it be great if every student could go to school in Anne Arundel County and feel like they matter on their holiday, instead of having to choose between going to school and going to synagogue? It would be really great. And another thing that one of the other students brought up was evaluating or elevating all students and eliminating all gaps. So elevating the students, making them feel good and not having to stand out at school and feel like they are different, because that's what happens. Like, oh, sorry, I can't come to school because I'm Jewish. Then they're standing out in front of everybody. And the stress that puts on the kids goes back to what the high school kids were saying. And so I just really, really ask you to add that day back to the calendar for whatever reason. And I love what Ms. Corkadell said, that, it lifts everybody, whether it's a day to go for a hike or a day to go to synagogue. But I don't want my kids stressed sitting there in synagogue because I refuse to allow them to go to school, because if I don't respect my own religion, then what am I teaching my children? But I don't want them to feel that stress. I want them to be able to go. And so please add that day. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Avery Landis. I'm in 7th grade at Severna Park Middle School, and biased behavior in my school is really bad. I'd say almost once a week now I hear racial or anti-Semitic comments, either to kids I don't know, to friends, sometimes to me. I've dealt with it, anti-Semitic comments, but you have to stay strong when it happens. So I spoke to an administrator, and everyone just after that, I haven't heard any personally offending comments towards me. I've just been called a snitch, which I find really unfair because I was sticking up for what I believe in. And this was at the beginning of February, and last week was the last time I was called a snitch. And I think that's a little too far. But the reason I'm speaking here is I want you to close schools on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. These are the most important Jewish holidays, and I should not feel that I have to choose between my religion and my school. I'm very proud of my religion, and teachers, even though they're not told to, they still give tests and homework assignments to be completed while I'm at synagogue, so I have to stress when I come back from 1 day or 2 days to do homework, stay after school to do tests, and I find it unfair. So I say the teachers need to show more respect, and if AACPS respects us by closing schools, the message will follow through that to the student body. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, board members and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Joshua Schwartz. I am also a 7th grader at SPMS, Severna Park Middle School. As my friend said, anti-Semitism is a very big problem, and it has happened to me and my peers. And with some people, it is treated as a joke. This is as big as a problem as this is. You unfortunately have caused another problem with keeping us in school on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are two of our biggest holidays. And we, as Ms. Landis said, are standing out because we are staying home on those days. This is very big, and even though they are not supposed to, because I'm pretty sure you guys passed something about it, they are still, teachers are still assigning tests, which has even caused me to get a 0 and to lower my grade. As previously mentioned, I know, as I agreed, education is in good hands because I do very much so like my teachers and staff. My question is, why is this happening? This can be accounted to the lack of knowledge of Judaism and the lack of it being taught. As a student, I can say I taught more about Judaism to my class than my teacher did because of the stuff we were learning. If we were able to learn about holidays of my religion and people and the religions of others, it would really make others appreciate the importance of our big holidays and others' big holidays. If that happens, there's no reason the calendar should not have our holidays, have us be in school on our holidays, but have other religions have their holidays off. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ilana Schwartz. I am speaking tonight as a parent, as a former educator, and as a Jewish mother. And I find it in some ways almost silly that we have to come and talk about this and talk about, if we were in Montgomery County or Howard County or Baltimore County, this wouldn't even be an issue. However, we have found, as the boys have said, that in Anne Arundel County, I grew up in Howard County, anti-Semitism is a big deal here. When the survey came out and having an opportunity to pick different things or say, would your child be here, that, or as was mentioned before, feel like you have to pick an either or an or. It was like, instead of doing apples to apples, it was like apples to dragon fruit, to kiwi, to grapes, to things you can't even pronounce or open. And it's not a fair assessment. Recognizing that for us, high holidays are really important. And with this past year, the school year, that even though it says very specifically, so I'm looking right up there with the religious observance language, that testing is not supposed to happen those days, it still did. Homework was missed. There actually weren't opportunities to make them up. And starting off the school year with a 0, not okay. I heard some amazing things, and you're doing so many wonderful things when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And I heard diversity, diversity, diversity over and over tonight. And I think every single person in this room may have a different definition of diversity. And we heard it used in a lot of different ways, where it's not just socioeconomic class, it's not just race. It encompasses so many different things. And while we are making strides, it's not where it could be. So we have an amazing teaching moment available, where that looking at a school calendar where you can see that this day has importance, yet this one doesn't. What does that say to the rest of the community? We got to hear from a lot of different people when you see the numbers come in of what is important to that family, because this doesn't matter to them over here, because they may not understand, they may not realize that it's a big deal to other people. It's not theirs. So maybe it's let's pick this instead of that, where they're not necessarily equal weight. So we have an opportunity to decide, and well, not we, you have an opportunity to decide of where's the teaching moment here? Do we say that this has value? Because if we're saying and celebrating, I heard mentioned tonight, diversity and cultural celebrations, that every student matters, targeting every single student. We don't want people just to be numbers. Diversity has always been at the forefront of the decision. So I invite you to keep that in consideration, that it's not just about numbers. It's not just about majority or minority. It's about people and every person mattering. So I do appreciate everything that you do, and I do urge you to please put Rosh Hashanah back on the calendar for whatever purpose it is that serves you, so it can serve your community. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And Avery and Joshua, if you've been here late tonight, and if you need to miss first period tomorrow, we can get the superintendent.
School's closed tomorrow.
Oh, spring break.
This is how they're starting their spring break.
We'll take notes, though.
I was trying to work in getting a note from the superintendent, so that's what. Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else that would like to testify on this motion? Seeing none. Mrs. Connolly, or actually any other board discussion on this motion? Seeing none. To close schools on what's the date?
September 30th.
September 30th, 2019.
Okay.
Wait, no, but we have to add. Right.
No, do that separate. My motion is to close schools.
Right. So it's my understanding then, just procedurally, if this motion carries, then we would have to have a subsequent motion to change an end date or make it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I think it just makes sense to keep these simple.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm a simple guy. And seeing no further questions, Mrs. Connolly, this is a vote to close schools on September 30th, 2019. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Grannon?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer?
Nay.
Ms. Urea?
Aye.
Ms. Antoine?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Mr. Leib?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Golan?
Aye.
That's 8 in the positive, 1 in the negative. Motion passes.
Okay. Given that, we might need a minute to come up with a subsequent motion that somebody can offer. Mrs. Hummer.
This is not about the end date, but I have another amendment that I would like to make to our calendar. Right, currently our calendar says Christmas, winter break, and Easter, spring break. And I would like to change that so that it just says winter break and spring break, because we're not designating and highlighting one religious purpose over another. And that's just a minor language change, but I think it does send an important message, because it is winter break and it is our spring break, and it happens to fall on those dates, but it's not because of those times.
Second.
Okay.
Quick point of information. Those dates are mandated by state law, and I'm just pointing out for everybody's knowledge that the state law expressly refers to both Christmas and Easter.
Okay. Any further discussion? Without rewording all of that, Mrs. Hummer, I was going to say that sounded like a motion, so we're going to move and second. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, Mrs. Connolly, on Mrs. Hummer's motion, would you please call the roll? I'm sorry. It's late. Public testimony. Seeing please call the roll.
Mr. Grannon?
I'm going to vote no, but I want to just state for the public's consideration, obviously saw my other vote, and we have other things on the calendar where we close for Rosh Hashanah, we close for other holidays, and consistent with the state law, I'm going to vote no on changing the names of these breaks.
Ms. Corcadeau? Aye. Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Ms. Urea?
Aye.
Ms. Antoine?
So the motion is to change it from Christmas break to winter break? I thought it was already on the calendar as winter break.
She's removing Christmas and Easter.
And that, just clarification, you're requesting that for what reason?
Just to state that we're doing those as for, even though they're required by law, but it is a winter break and it's other, and it's, that I think that is a more inclusive term, that those are the reasons that we're closing for, is to have in there.
Okay,
So-
one more follow-up. So then, if we're taking away the term Christmas, then on what we just voted for, we'll call it some other type of break?
I don't know about that. I'm just talking about, winter break and spring break.
Right. So in my confusion, I'll have to vote no.
Ms. Shawhan?
Aye.
Mr. Leib?
Nay.
Ms. Ellis?
I have to clarify my position on this. I would ultimately like to see us have a spring break that coincides with the state universities. It provides more opportunity for family vacations, and it would make it not an Easter break. But I think it's kind of disingenuous at this point. I know what the intention is, but right now, this break that we have built in this calendar by law is around Easter. I'd like to see that changed, but we do have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur in here, so I'm not looking to change the language at this point. Nay.
Mr. Gillen?
And for the same reasons Mr. Grannon said no.
Okay, 4 in the positive, 5 in the negative, motion fails.
Motion fails. Thank you. Any other motions at this time? Mrs. Hummer.
So this isn't a motion, but I want to echo, and because I had the same thing, and one of the young men, and I'm sorry, I think Joshua, said, as we talk about inclusivity and building those, I think it's important to teach our students about the holidays of all of our religions. And I loved hearing him say that he's educated and he's talked about with his students. And I would like to see, and this isn't a motion, this is just, I'm putting this out here for the staff and everyone to consider, that around our religious observance days, for Eid, for Diwali, for the Jewish high holidays, that we build into the curriculum. We have a wonderful global community citizenship class that'll be starting in the fall that's a requirement for all 9th graders, and part of it is going to have a religion component. We have advisory lessons among our middle schools, and we have community circles in our elementary schools, and I think that's the perfect opportunity around these dates to talk about these holidays, so that if a student is absent for a religious observance day, their classmates will understand why and have a better understanding, and it won't just be, where are they? I know when we were discussing Diwali a month or so ago, this board, we didn't know anything about Diwali, and we were learning that too, and I would love to see that built into the curriculum around those days, so that we can include, and I think that would be a way to really be more inclusive and and bring people to a greater understanding, because we only get acceptance and build when we build relationships and we build understanding of each other. So thank you for that suggestion. You're right in vein. That was when I heard you say that, I said, yes, that's what I'd like to see too. So thank you.
Are there any further motions to make at this time? I know we have a procedural one momentarily, but okay, please. Yeah. I think it will be June. It looks like the last day for students would have to be June 16th, unless somebody wants to correct me on that.
I move that we extend the end date to change the existing calendar to modify the end date to be June the 16th.
Beginning of the week is that?
Tuesday.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there a discussion on this motion? Or any clarifications that need to be made?
No.
Yeah, but the calendar stands, so it's just the amendment. Mm-hmm. Do we have to procedurally vote to adopt the revised calendar?
But I think we should also
Yeah. Okay. Can you do that next? Okay.
Can I?
Yes, please.
If I could add to the motion, so the motion stands now as moving the last day for students from the 15th to the 16th, and if I could add to that, the last day for teachers would move from the 16th to the 17th.
Mr. Gilliland, President Gilliland, if it would please, I would like to withdraw my original amendment and propose instead the motion that of amendment to the calendar that we make the final day for students June the 16th and the final day for teachers June the 17th.
Second.
Okay. Discussion on that?
Thank you.
Seeing none, Mrs. Connolly, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Grannon?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadone?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Ms. Urea?
Aye.
Ms. Antoine?
Aye.
Ms. Strahan?
Aye.
Mr. Leib?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
9-0, motion passes.
Before we do the survey then, so I think we're going to have a motion momentarily aligning with the calendar committee's recommendation to do the survey. But before we do that, can somebody correct me, do we need to procedurally vote for the calendar as amended, or do the amendments carry and that's the weight of the passage of the calendar? I'm happy to do the vote and just be safe if need be. So
I think so.
I don't know.
no, no vote?
The calendar had already been approved. Right.
Okay, so we're good. All right.
It's been approved, the amendments carry.
I just don't want
Right, you don't have to do it again.
Dr. Salmon Collins. Okay. Mrs. Hummer.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that an additional calendar survey be put out in September for the benefit of the calendar committee as they move forward to make recommendations for the 2021 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. This, we've got two lights on this. Mr. Leib and then Mrs. Schalheim.
Mr. President, I just question whether a motion by the board is required in order for the superintendent. You know, this is part of their job. Yeah, if they're going to do the calendar, they said they're going to do a survey, just let's back off and let the staff.
I'll
the
withdraw. You are
superintendent do their job.
absolutely correct, Mr. Leib. This falls under the superintendent's purview, and I'll just put out there that I'm in favor of it, and, you know, that we're going to. Thank you, Mr. Leib.
So the motion's been withdrawn. There's still two lights. Mrs. Schalheim, you were next.
But I do want to implore the creators of the survey to please, I mean, you've now heard from a variety of us. If there, and I don't know the answer, this is not my wheelhouse, and I hated statistics in school, and I don't know how to do that, but there's a way not to pin these sorts of things against each other, I would be grateful. Just like, isn't it weird that not only are we pitting, you know, observances against, you know, inclement weather, but you're also pitting inclement weather against teacher PD. So I just, if there's another way to get what we need in terms of input from the community, another way to phrase that or frame that, I would just be grateful, and thank you.
And if I, thank you, Ms. Schottenheim, if I could share that we will now have significantly more time to craft a survey. The board gave us very little turnaround time to get the survey out and get the data back to you so you can make a decision for tonight. Correct? Now I want to finish.
Yes.
The group, and you did say that you're not an expert at this. Our resident experts worked on this. You don't like the way the survey came out, and I appreciate that. But I assure you that staff worked on this to the best of their abilities to craft a survey that would get you valid and reliable data for you to consider. And so we will certainly have more time now to craft a maybe more thoughtful survey. But I think the team did incredible amount of work in a short period of time to get you data to make decisions that were made tonight.
And I am grateful, so please don't misunderstand my gratitude, Dr. Olato. I just was troubled by the ranking question. I think we've been over it. I know you guys, you worked very quickly to get us this back. Don't misunderstand my gratitude. But now that we have time, I'd rather do it. I'd rather, you know, have them have another look. And that's all I was saying. So just to not have the same problem occur again. That's all.
Okay, Ms. Antwine.
I just share the sentiments of Ms. Dana here. We haven't accused any of you all in any of our conversations. We can definitely say, okay, well, this was a botched up survey and this was trash. We didn't say that. We also said that we heard from the community just like everyone else, and they have other concerns. So in order for us to mitigate those concerns, and Ms. Tudor, I know what all you have going on. I commend you guys for doing that. However, our results didn't quite align with the intent, and we want to make sure that happens. And I agree with you, Dr. Olato, that the turnaround time was short, considering that we haven't had legislation and all those things as dependencies to these results. But now that we do not have those things, we do request that we have more considerations before this goes out to the public, especially considering communities like those that stepped up tonight. We've had the Muslim community, and I personally had some vets come back to me about their concerns. So let's look at that, work together, and do what's best for the students.
Mr. Grannon.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but we don't need to say Mother May I, guys. If any two of us want to see the survey before it goes out, we'll just simply put it on the agenda, and we'll see the draft survey before it goes out, and we can provide input.
Okay, I see no further lights. No further discussion on the calendar. We'll move to our consent calendar. Mrs. Corkadell.
Mr. President, I move to bundle items 5.01 through 5.09 and put them forth as a motion for approval.
Okay. So let's do that as two separate, so we can do superintendent's recommendation. So first motion to bundle.
Mm-hmm.
Motion.
Oh, yeah.
Bundle second.
I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
All in favor on bundling? Aye. No. Okay, great. Motion carries. We now have bundled items. Dr. Olato, your recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. I recommend the board approve contracts as listed on tonight's agenda, 5.01 through 5.09.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second. Discussion on any of the items. Seeing no lights, Ms. Hanchwine, sorry.
So I just had, in terms of 5.01, I noticed that there were two responses, and those two responses came from contractors, I believe, that have worked with us before. I was trying to understand if the survey, back on the survey, if the solicitation went out to a specified group of contractors because of the work being done.
Alex Shacknew, Chief Operating Officer. You'll see on the cover sheet, Ms. Antwine, that the bid was sent to 48 firms, 19 of which were MBE firms as well. So those are firms that have pre-selected. We have a process here at the school district that any company can sign up. It's an electronic online application process. Sign up and declare interest categories, so that anytime that we have a solicitation, in this case it's floor covering, but it could be fill in the blank, there's hundreds of these categories, right? So you fill in the category, and anytime work comes up in that category, you are direct solicited. But over and above that, we also advertise on e-Maryland Marketplace, which is a requirement of state law. We advertise on our website, so there's other avenues as well. So we do both large-scale advertisements of all of our solicitation, but in addition to that, we specifically direct, target, and send out those solicitations to those firms that have pre-registered. So on this item and on every one of the other contract items that will come before you, so example, if you flip to the very next one in your packet there, not to throw you off, Ms. Antwine, but just orientation-wise for 5.02, you'll see that that one, which had to do with copiers, went out to 218 firms, 47 of which were declared MBE, et cetera. So that information is provided for you on the cover sheet of each and every one of these items.
Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am,
and while
absolutely.
you're there, I have one more follow-up question about these contracts. I noticed, based on the material of instruction, that there were separate contracts going to the same group. Is it possible to do one contract in terms of administration, or, for example, if it's to enhance high school reading and then also to enhance middle school reading, but the award is to the same company, do you guys normally put that on one contract after we approve the contracts, or are those considered two separate contracts?
I think for tracking purposes, we do track our expenditures. They're sort of split by convenience. That's one part of the answer. The second answer, though, it's not necessarily a fait accompli that it's going to go to the same firm. So, you know, different firms specialize in different things. In this case, it wound up being the same firm, but you don't always know that going into it. So we don't want to disadvantage. If we bundle, sometimes when we bundle things, you'll sort of knock out a company that could have gotten part of the work, but maybe can't take all of the work. So there's different procurement strategies, and our purchasing office works, which whatever the subject matter expert is, in this case it's material of instruction, but purchasing works with that end user to sort of develop a solicitation strategy that we think balances getting the best price, certainly getting the product that we need, but not disadvantaging the industry, the business colleagues as well, because we need them to be successful in order for us to be successful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further board questions? Seeing none, any public comment on these bundled items? Seeing none. Mrs. Connolly, this is a vote on the consent items.
Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Mr. Rea?
Aye.
Ms. Antwine?
Aye.
Ms. Shawheim?
Aye.
Mr. Leib?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
8-0.
801 absent.
Motion carries.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6.01, there are no administrative personnel appointments tonight. We'll move to item 6.02, which is on second reading tonight. Ethics and conflicts of interest. Ms. Ortiz.
Good evening. For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. We have Policy BAF before you on second reading, Ethics and Conflict of Interest. It went for a 30-day public comment period on our website, and we did not receive any public comment, so it's on second reading before you today, and it will go on third reading at the next meeting.
Great. We've got two lights. Ms. Schallheim.
My comment's not about this particular one, but just to say thank you, because you're amazing, and thanks for everything you did for us this session and all of your updates on the various bills and the incredible, I guess, report. Is that, I think that's accurate, of all the things that happened and occurred this legislative session. I'm grateful, and so I don't have any specific questions about this. I just wanted to tell you that I appreciate you.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate it. I love it. Session makes the cold months of the year go by very quickly.
Yes.
And I've been doing this for 14 sessions now under my belt, and so it was an interesting one, as usual.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schallheim, it's going to sound a lot less genuine now when I thank her. So. Ms. Antwine.
Whatever she said, ditto, for sure. But in section 4 of this, it talked about candidates in a contingency of eight days after written notice of failure to file. Is that aligned with what the State Board of Elections is requiring, or is that some policy for us? And the reason I bring it up is because, of course, I've been a candidate at one point, and I wasn't aware of these policies and would not, as a candidate, necessarily have known to go under ethics and otherwise to look at that for my candidate requirements. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we are aligning with what those Board of Election requirements would be as well.
Can you tell me what page?
Yes, ma'am. I'm looking.
12. Looks like 12 of 23.
12 of 23.
Thank you.
And then it's a section about candidates to be members of the board.
Yes, so the language, that is a new language that is now applicable to our board. It's always been in the state policy regulations, the ethics regulations, and so we added it now that we have elected members of the board. Previously, it didn't apply to our board because they were all of the members were appointed, but now since we're moving towards a fully elected school board, we've added this information.
Wonderful. So then I would also recommend that the board also re-emphasize this when the time comes with maybe some training or something to ensure that the candidates that are considering this are well aware of our policies as well.
Yeah, and that may be something. I'm not
This is
sure
a
if the state
comment.
would- oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a recommendation as we move forward that we consider additional training offering training for those candidates.
Great, thank you. And just to confirm, too, as a follow-up to Ms. Antwine's question, we send this, once this passes, this requirement would then go to the Board of Elections, and then they would have that on, I'm assuming they would take what's relevant for their needs and sort of copy and paste that into their format to say that the ethics form needs to be filed, so forth and so on, so that it...
Right, so the State Board of Elections, they are up to date with all of the ethics requirements by the state, and so anything dealing with candidates, they would have that information available to candidates once individuals file for elected office and the various sort of laws. And so this probably was included, and perhaps it just, I mean, you know, when folks are filing for candidacy, there's a lot going on, so you just may not recall it, but yes, this is information that would be made available to candidates, because as Ms. Antwine said, you know, someone may not know that this is out there and that there are certain requirements, but the state ethics, the State Board of Elections would provide the requisite information to candidates.
Ms. Urea.
Hi, Ms. Ortiz. I just want to thank you as well for all the work that you did for us. And I also want to just say that you're one of the most selfless people I know. Not only did you help me when I became the chair, as well as Ms. Corkadell, but you really extended and helped Krask a lot, especially Rita, as she's the Secretary of Legislation, and she learned so much from you. So I really just want to thank you for that and everything that you've done. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you. You guys are gonna get me all emotional. Thank you.
I see no further lights. I'll just add, sort of the Me Too now, but, again, I know your reputation is highly regarded among our delegation and certainly the relevant committees in the Senate and the House. And so thank you again for all that you did for us and continue to do. And I think this is just going to be a chorus now. So, Mrs. Hummer.
Well, I have to throw it in because I was down there a lot.
My sidekick.
With Legislative Committee for MABE and down there a lot. And I will give a shout out. There was a bill right at the end in the Senate that that we did not support, and one of our senators pulled it up there the last day and pulled up our testimony from Jeanette and said, "Oh, no," and he listened to us and what we had to say. And so she makes a real difference when it comes out for things for our school system and for education in general. So you did a great job this session. I know it was, I think the final tally was over 2,000 something bills that came through, and education-wise, we were following close to 400 of them. And so she worked her tail off and did a great job.
Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love what I do. I love the fact that I can do policy and legislation. I'm glad that my end of session report is helpful to you. It's also helpful to me because we will have, as Ms. Corkadell stated earlier this evening, some policies that we will now need to look at as a result of new legislation. But I really love what I do. I love working for this school system. We have the best team in the state. I love my colleagues. I love our superintendent. We're very, very fortunate. So I've just never been happier at a place of employment. I literally come into work and I'm excited every day, and I've never had that anywhere else. So thank you. Let's keep it that way. So my review is when? No. Bob's the best. Thank you. Thank you.
For the record, any public comment on item 6.02? Seeing none, we'll now move to item 7.01, monthly financial status report. Are there any board questions on this item? Any public comment? Seeing none, thank you. Item 7.02, construction status report. Any board questions? I'm sorry, Mr. Leib.
Thank you. I just wanted to get Alex, get some exercise. It won't take long. Mr. Saxonovich, could you correct me, or I see the open space enclosures. Are we approaching the end of the pipeline for
Yes.
open space enclosures? I remember when this began a few moons ago.
Yes, sir. For the record, Alex Shaknova, Chief Operating Officer. I didn't have gray hair when I started this journey on open space. So we began with 36 in total. We're currently under construction at Chesapeake Bay Middle School, which is our last project of the open space line item program. We do have a couple other schools, such as Old Mill, Rippling Woods, that are going to be taken care of as part of a comprehensive CIP renovation or replacement, but the completion of the construction work at Chesapeake Bay Middle School will officially end the line item called open space enclosures.
Ain't it great when a plan comes together?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Corkadell.
So, this is real. This is not like a delayed April Fool's, because I remember reviewing this list when it was all fresh and new, over a decade ago. That is so wonderful, though, to hear. Where finally there's a light to the end of the tunnel, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's great. Great work. I mean, that was a monumental undertaking, most certainly, and through up years and down years. So, kudos. It's finally all done. And a bad chapter of well-intended design is now closed.
I will say that of all the construction projects that we've done over time, Ms. Corkadell, I think the open space enclosure program was probably the best received project category that this Board of Education has ever set about trying to undertake. So,
Yes, and I can see that.
a long time ago, Miss Nally, a name very familiar, actually championed us doing the first pilot project, and it was at Van Bachlen Elementary School, a school where she was an administrator at. And we did that to convince the state. The state did not actually have a program called open space enclosures. It was not a eligible category of work. So the county government fully funded 100% out of pocket Van Bachlen as a demonstration project. And then it took 2 years for the state to finally recognize it as a viable category of work. So it's been a very long journey.
Very well been stretching this out another 5 years. So kudos for the tenacity. Job well done.
Mrs. Hummer.
And I just want to say, I'm always, whenever we get these status updates, I'm always so impressed to see in one document how much y'all have going on and are managing at one time everything from a complete new construction to, systemic upgrades to everything, and doing it all well and on time and under budget. So hats off to your team.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. She worked in the yaw in honor of Mrs. Nally, so thank you for that. Seeing no further comments on this, any public comments? Seeing none. Item 7.03, award of contracts. Any board questions? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. We have to go back into closed session for one quick appeal. So let me just announce that the next general board meeting will be on Wednesday, May 1st, 2019 at 7 p.m. And again, please note that during the month of May, we shifted the day meeting to be in the evening. So the first Wednesday will be an evening meeting at 7 p.m. given the county executive's budget announcement that morning. And then the next meeting of the policy committee will be on Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, 1 p.m. in conference room 2A. Ms. Urea.
So for a record at 10:46, we are finished. But anyway, Mr. President, I move that the board go into closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
No idea. So it took me a little bit. She was fine. She was like, bye. But I was the one that, okay, should I follow it? Would it be okay? It was different. So everything from the school bus to the way the school day worked, to lunch, packing a lunch again, or giving her a lunch money, or, just all of those little things. It really was different. Then same thing with my other son. It went fine. But my third child, he